Chapter 542. After pondering for a moment, Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Since he wants to see me, then tell him to come to Jingmen Island." "I'm now in Jingmen Island." "What are you doing in Jingmen Island, boss?" Kang Xia was surprised. "I told you before that I'm going to rent 2 islands in the South China Sea," said Tan Xiu. "I happened to encounter a special situation, so I came here to handle it." Kang Xia said, "I got it. Are you going back to Shanghai at the end of the month?" "More or less," said Tan Xiu. "Since you can go back to Shanghai at the end of the month, then I'll stay there and personally preside over the opening of the new store there," said Kang Xia with a smile. After talking for a while, Tan Xiu then hung up the phone. He had sent some people to investigate the Tsubo clan of YDL, and naturally, he had also investigated the information of the Tsubo clan's second-in-command, Druffet, who held great power in the Tsubo clan and had a very high status in YDL. Revenge? Tan Xiu didn't think so. If Druffet really wanted to retaliate, he would have directly dealt with the magnificent Tang Corporation. He wouldn't have contacted Kang Xia or even asked to see him through her. However, if it wasn't for revenge, then why did he want to see him? After thinking about it, Tan Xiu still couldn't figure it out, so he was too lazy to think about it. He was ready to deal with the situation as it came. At present, his focus was on the 2 islands. He didn't know how the Tang family operated and whether they could take the 2 islands. However, he had decided that if the Tang family couldn't take the 2 islands, he would directly use force. Although this was only a last resort, he must never let the Yao family get it. Time fleeted by. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, Tan Xiu's life was very leisurely. Aside from the necessary daily cultivation, he read books, drank tea, and accompanied the unconscious Gu Yan, in the exquisite pagoda. "Grand Master, a guest has come to our everlasting feast hall. He said that he has an appointment with you." Gu Xiaoshua's figure appeared on the 7th floor of the exquisite pagoda and respectfully reported. "Druffet is here, isn't he?" asked Tang Xiu lightly. "Yes, it's him." Gu Xiaoshua nodded. Tan Xiu nodded in response. After leaving the exquisite pagoda with Gu Xiaoshua, he went straight to Druffet's private room in the everlasting feast hall. After showing his identity to the 4 foreign men at the door, he stepped into the room. However, when he entered, the first person he saw wasn't Druffet, but an unexpected acquaintance. "Miss Ji, I didn't expect to meet you here." This time, Ji Shiyan followed Druffet to Jingmen Island because Druffet was a friend of her big boss. Her group and Druffet had a business cooperation relationship. After seeing Tan Xiu come in, she also revealed a surprised look. Obviously, she did not expect that the person Druffet wanted to see was actually Tan Xiu. "Hello, Mr. Tang." Tan Xiu nodded slightly and looked at the tall Druffet. He then extended his hand and smilingly said, "Welcome, friend from afar. I'm Tan Xiu, the magnificent Tang Corporation's boss." Druffet didn't extend his hand, but squinted his eyes to observe Tan Xiu a few times. Then, he coldly snorted and lightly said, "Boss Tang is very powerful. You even made me come all the way from Star City to Jingmen Island to see you." Tan Xiu's face turned gloomy. He went straight to the chair inside and sat down. After crossing his legs, he lit a cigarette and took a few deep puffs. Then, he indifferently said, "Haven't your people seen whether I'm powerful or not? What's wrong? Do you think those losses are not enough? Do you want to lose more people in our country?" Druffet's expression changed. Tan Xiu's words were like exposing his scars, causing his expression to turn extremely unsightly. If it weren't for the fact that Huaxia was Tan Xiu's territory, he would have pulled out his pistol and fiercely shot Tan Xiu to vent his hatred. "Mr. Tang, I want the magnificent Tang Corporation to give me an explanation, and I want you to give me an explanation. Because no one in the whole world can make my Tsubo clan suffer losses and come out unscathed." Druffet directly threatened. Tan Xiu turned to look at Ji Shiyan and lightly said, "Miss Ji, I'll give you face and not kill him now." But I hope you can take him away, else I can't guarantee that he can leave the everlasting feast hall. Druffet's expression changed, whereas Ji Shiyan looked panicked. Others might not know how powerful Tan Xiu was, but she was perfectly aware of it. She and Li Laozhan were personally rescued by Tan Xiu. Mr. Tang, I think you misunderstood. Mr. Druffet doesn't mean to make things difficult for you. Although I don't know what happened between you, I believe it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Mr. Druffet, Mr. Tang is my friend and once my savior. I'm afraid I won't be able to help you much if you still speak with such an attitude, said Ji Shiyan seriously. Druffet was silent for a long while. Then, he nodded and looked at Tan Xiu, saying, Mr. Tang, I've sent some people to investigate the cause of the incident. It's indeed not directly related to your magnificent Tang Corporation. It's some special department of your country. Forget it. I won't pursue the responsibility since the previous incident has already happened. As a matter of fact, the reason I came to you this time is to talk about cooperation. I don't think there's a need for us to cooperate, said Tan Xiu indifferently. Mr. Tang, I think there's a need for us to cooperate. Druffet shook his head. Perhaps you don't know what I mean by cooperation. Tan Xiu spread out his hands and said, to be honest, I really don't know what kind of medicine you're selling in your gourd. Tell me, what kind of cooperation do you mean? I want to pay a high price to hire some people from you to help me with some trivial matters, said Druffet. If the result is what I want to see, I think you can get my friendship as well as good benefits. Just say it directly, asked Tan Xiu. As far as I know, the everlasting feast hall is your property, said Druffet with all seriousness. The everlasting feast hall has several very powerful people. Whether it's teamwork, sneak attacks, or assassinations, they're all top-notch experts. I can't wait any longer. I want to sit on the seat of the Tsubo clan's patriarch. So, I think you should know what I want to say next, yes? Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and slowly said, the price, $1 billion, plus a large gold mine in Africa, said Druffet. Then, can you tell me who you want to invite? Asked Tan Xiu. Black and White Impermanence, Yin Shirsan, Yin Shirsi, Meat Grinder Gao Feng, and Snow Rabbit Mo Lei, said Druffet in a deep voice. Of course, if you can send more experts, I'll increase the price by $100 million for each one. Of course, the premise is that their strength must be on par with the Black and White Impermanence. That's a big deal. Tan Xiu applauded. I think this business can be done. However, I still want to ask you something. How did you know that I'm the owner of the Everlasting Feast Hall? How did you know that the four of them are in the Everlasting Feast Hall? I have my own intelligence channels, said Druffet with squinted eyes. I also know the whereabouts of the four of them. I spent a lot of money to buy them. You should have heard of the Dark Wind Organization, right? It's the world's largest intelligence agency. The Dark Wind Organization. It was the first time Tan Xiu heard of this name. Nevertheless, he became vigilant toward this intelligence agency. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, $2 billion, plus that gold mine in Africa. You can't bargain. The current patriarch of your Tsubwa clan will disappear from this planet in 10 days at most. What if you can't do it? Asked Druffet in a deep voice. Since I dare to accept this deal, I'll definitely be able to do it, said Tan Xiu lightly. Mr. Druffet, you're looking for me to seek cooperation. I won't watch such a huge sum of money fail to enter my pocket in the end. Druffet thought for a few minutes before he slowly nodded and said, if so, then let's have a happy cooperation. I'll ask you one last question, said Tan Xiu calmly. There are many excellent assassins in the world, as well as many powerful mercenary organizations. Why did you come to me? And why did you go to the magnificent Tang Corporation instead of directly coming to the Everlasting Feast Hall? There's a ghost around me, said Druffet with a forced smile. Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment before he immediately understood what he meant. Then, he smilingly said, "It seems that Mr. Druffet's situation in the Tsubwa clan isn't as good as the outsiders think. Power is a very fascinating thing, but it's also a very dangerous thing," said Druffet helplessly. Tan Shio nodded in agreement and smilingly said, "I'll give you the information you should give me now. I believe that you must have made some preparations in advance since you want to invite someone." Druffet gave a thumbs up and praised Tan Shio. Then, he directly picked up the briefcase and handed it to Tan Shio, saying, "All the information about him is inside. If possible, I hope that aside from him, his several right-hand men can also disappear from this world. That gold mine was actually prepared because of them." Tan Shio got up and lightly smiled, "I understand. I still have other things to do, so I can't accompany you anymore. Mr. Druffet, you'll be a VIP of the Everlasting Feast Hall in the future, so please take care of me if there's a big deal. Your expenses here will be free of charge." Having said that, he directly left. After meeting Gu Xiaoxue at the beach, he lightly said, "I've received a big deal, $2 billion and a gold mine. I'm going to let light and dark go out to play." Gu Xiaoxue lightly smiled and said, "Grand Master, their strength has recently advanced by leaps and bounds. Even I'm not their match, so I believe they can easily complete the task." Tan Shio handed the briefcase to her and said, "The target is the current patriarch of the Tsubwa clan and several of his right-hand men. The specific information should be in this briefcase. I'll leave this matter to you to follow up." "All right." Gu Xiaoxue nodded with a smile. Chapter 543. Secret matters must be dealt with in a secret way. Although Tan Shio didn't have a high EQ, he had an extremely high wisdom. After handing over the matter to Gu Xiaoxue, he resumed his leisurely life from 2 days ago. Although Han Qingwu would look for him once in the morning and once in the morning to talk about some topics, they never talked about the memories in Han Qingwu's mind again. A few days passed by slowly. Compared to Tan Shio's leisurely life, Yao Xinhua's days felt like years. It had been a week since he received any news from his fourth uncle, Yao Qingteng. He sent someone to Clam Island, but the news he got was that there was no trace of his fourth uncle on Clam Island. It was as if Yao Qingteng had disappeared into thin air. He suspected Tan Shio, but the result of the investigation he sent was that Tan Shio had always been in the Everlasting Feast Hall and had never left. Furthermore, what gave him a headache was that he didn't know which celestial being he had provoked recently. All the things he carried with him, including his wallet, ID card, bank card, and other things, were all stolen. He didn't even know how the other party did it. It was just like, he didn't know how Tan Shio made him faint at the charity gala. Yao Xinhua had conveyed all the matters here to his family, but the order he received was to continue staying in Jingmen Island and observe the situation. At the Everlasting Feast Hall. A fragrant aroma wafted in the hall on the first floor. Ji Shiyan, dressed in casual clothes, quietly sat at the dining table in the corner and tasted the food. Although a few days had passed, she didn't leave because of Druffet's departure and stayed in the Everlasting Feast Hall. Ji Shiyan now knew that Tan Shio was the Everlasting Feast Hall's big boss. Although it was somewhat unexpected, she still felt that if she could have a good relationship with Tan Shio, it would be a lot of benefits for her in the future. In addition, she also had another idea. Recently, because her boss was charmed by a vixen, under the pillow talk of that vixen, her boss began to change his attitude towards her. This made her very depressed, and she even faintly had the idea of leaving the company and finding another way out. Therefore, when she was sent by her boss to Star City to receive Druffet, she had her eyes on the magnificent Tang Corporation, which was also Tan Shio. What surprised and delighted her was that the person Druffet wanted to visit was called Tan Shio. Moreover, he was even the owner of the magnificent Tang Corporation, Tan Shio, a former acquaintance. Therefore, she stayed and prepared to find time to see Tan Shio again. "Hello, your dishes are all here." The beautiful waitress placed the last dish on the table and bowed with a smile. Ji Shiyan nodded and suddenly said, "Can I trouble you? I want to see Tan Shio." Can you help me? Sorry, I don't have the right to inform the boss. The waitress said with an apologetic expression. Ji Shiyan said, if you don't have the authority, then let your leader do it. I'm a guest, so you should be able to meet the needs of the guests, right? I'll try. 10 minutes later. Tan Xiu walked into the restaurant's hall. After glancing around, he walked toward the corner of the hall. After taking a seat opposite Ji Shiyan, Tan Xiu waved to her and said with a smile, I heard you're looking for me. Is there something you need? I do have something to discuss with you, Mr. Tang, said Ji Shiyan with a smile. What is it? Asked Tan Xiu. What do you think of my ability, Mr. Tang? Asked Ji Shiyan. Tan Xiu looked at her seriously and nodded with a smile. Your ability should be good given your previous position and the things you've done. Ji Shiyan sat up straight and asked, will you hire me if I recommend myself to you? You want to jump ship? Tan Xiu was surprised. I do have such an idea, but I haven't found a job yet. Ji Shiyan nodded. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then asked, I want to know the reason. Ji Shiyan said with a helpless expression, originally, I'm the confidant of my current boss, so I can be put in an important position in the company. But my boss has recently been captivated by a woman. And that woman and I have some personal grudges before. I'm sure you've heard the saying of pillow talk. To be honest, this kind of pillow talk is really powerful. I've been given the cold shoulder recently, and a lot of assignments have been given to me. I feel that if this continues, I won't need to resign as my current company will fire me. Tan Xiu suddenly understood and said with a smile, I'll give you half a month. After you've dealt with the current company's affairs, go to Star City to find Kang Xia. I believe she'll arrange a suitable position for you. Ji Shiyan's eyes lit up and excitedly said, the magnificent Tang Corporation's development prospects are the brightest I can see. I firmly believe that I've chosen the right path to enter the magnificent Tang Corporation. Thank you in advance, boss. I'll work hard in the future. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, speaking of which, we've also experienced some things together, so there's no need to say any more polite words. Also, you're staying here because you want to talk to me about these things, right? Yes. Ji Shiyan nodded and smilingly said. Ji Shiyan, there are some words that you can listen to, and some words that you can't, said Tan Xiu. You're a smart woman, so I'm sure you know what I mean. Ji Shiyan hesitated for a moment before a trace of understanding finally appeared inside her heart. She nodded and said, I seem to have accompanied Mr. Druffett to see you a few days ago, but I forgot what you talked about. Tan Xiu gave a thumbs up and praised, you're really worth teaching. Alright, since we've come across such a meal, I don't think you'll mind if we dine together, right? It's my honor, said Ji Shiyan with a smile. Originally, the meal should have ended in a pleasant atmosphere, but just as Tan Xiu ate a few mouthfuls, his mobile phone rang. When he took it out and saw the caller ID, he immediately felt a headache because the caller was Han Qingwu. What's the matter, Teacher Han? Tan Xiu, help me. Han Qingwu's urgent cry came from the phone. Tan Xiu's complexion changed. He abruptly got up and asked in a deep voice, where are you? What happened? Seaside Road, Bimo Shopping Mall, said Han Qingwu hurriedly. I'm being. Get lost. I'm being besieged. Tan Xiu gestured to Ji Shiyan and strode out of the hall to the parking lot. On the way, he encountered a patrol team and directly stopped the 8 of them. Take me to the Bimo Shopping Mall on Seaside Road. Yes. The 8 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall answered in unison. At the Bimo Shopping Mall. Han Qingwu leaned against the wall as she looked at the dozens of young men in sportswear and crew cut in front of her. Her heart was filled with nervousness. At the front of the dozen young men, Huang Shiqing wore a disdainful expression as he coldly said, Bitch, you broke my brother's arm. You must come with us today. Otherwise, my Huang family martial school's face will be thrown away. I'm not going. Han Qingwu raised the handbag in her hand and angrily shouted. Although her strength and speed had become 10 times stronger than before, she didn't know any martial arts at all. She might be able to knock down anyone in front of her in a one-on-one fight, but she simply couldn't beat more than a dozen young men. You're not going. Huang Shiqing sneered. It's not up to you. Han Qingwu angrily shouted, it's your brother who molested other women and even touched me. That's why I hit him. Who knew that he would be so weak that his arm was directly broken? If you dare to act recklessly, I'm sure someone will come to clean you up soon. Just because of the phone call you just made? Huang Shiqing sneered. What a joke. There are indeed some people in Jingmen Island that I, Huang Shiqing, can't afford to offend. But I don't put any random guy in my eyes. If you have the ability, call someone from the Ouyang family. The Ouyang family? Ouyang Lulu's face emerged inside Han Qingwu's mind, but she immediately expelled it. Ouyang Lulu was not a good girl. Although she was from Jingmen Island and also a member of the Ouyang family, she probably wouldn't help her. Maybe she would even stand on the side and take pleasure in her misfortune if she knew what had happened to her. I warn you, the person I called is very powerful. A lot of powerful people don't dare to be arrogant in front of him. If you dare to provoke me, I'm sure he'll make you look good. If you don't believe me, we can wait for him to come. Wait for him to come. Huang Shiqing sneered. I can't afford to waste my time. Take her back to the martial school. If I don't teach her a good lesson this time, I won't be able to swallow my anger. A young man rolled up his sleeves and grinned, Big Brother Qing, this woman looks good. Leave her to me. I promise I'll make her obedient and apologize to you and Brother Yang. Then I'll leave her to you, said Huang Shiqing indifferently. A look of excitement instantly appeared on the young man's face. He strode toward Han Qingwu and reached out to grab her shoulder. Fuck off. Han Qingwu waved the handbag in her hand. Her right leg quickly kicked the young man's face and sent him flying. Bam! The young man's body fell to the ground 5 or 6 meters away as he directly fainted. What? The remaining people looked dull. They didn't expect that the seemingly frail Han Qingwu was able to knock out their companion with just a kick. They previously thought that Han Qingwu could break Huang Shiyang's arm because of his bad luck and that he might have fallen. But now, it seemed that this woman was very powerful. Huang Shiqing squinted his eyes. The speed of Han Qingwu's kick was a bit faster than his fastest speed, which made him secretly vigilant. However, after seeing Han Qingwu's panicked expression, he sneered and said in a deep voice, Xiao Dao, capture this bitch for me. Got it. A stocky youth called Xiao Dao strode toward Han Qingwu and fiercely whipped his leg on Han Qingwu's shoulder, directly knocking Han Qingwu to the ground. Today's 4th chapter is over. I'm looking for all kinds of support. Chapter 544. At this time, Huang Shiqing realized that although the woman before him was very fast and powerful, she obviously didn't know any martial arts moves. She wasn't even good at fighting. Such a discovery made his tense heart instantly calm down, and a mocking expression appeared in his eyes. Pa! Huang Shiqing grabbed Han Qingwu and slapped her face. As 5 bright red fingerprints appeared on Han Qingwu's face, Huang Shiqing casually threw her to Xiao Dao and sneered, take her back to the martial school and tell her to call me on the way. I want to see who in Jingmen Island can save her. Alrighty. Xiao Dao let out a grim smile and grabbed Han Qingwu's arm, escorting her into a car. As the few cars quickly left, Han Qingwu called Tang Xiu on the way with fear filling her heart. At the Heroes Crest Martial School. The western suburbs of Jingmen Island didn't reveal much, but it had a martial arts master overseeing it. The schoolmaster didn't care about worldly affairs all year round, and the entire operation of the martial school was completely controlled by the deputy schoolmaster, Jiang Mentian. Jiang Mentian was a martial arts grandmaster whose strength had reached the pinnacle. Even if more than a dozen martial arts masters besieged him, it would be very difficult for them to get close to him. Relying on his martial arts, he had once laid a foundation in Jingmen Island with his bare hands. Later on, no one knew that he inexplicably became the deputy schoolmaster of the Hero's Crest Martial School and stayed there for nearly 20 years. In recent years, Jiang Mentian stayed in the martial school almost every day. Apart from practicing martial arts, he also grew flowers and grasses. His days were particularly comfortable. Despite that, his strength still made the big shots of Jingmen Island respect him very much. They often came to visit him, drink a few cups, and exchange sentiments. Of course, part of the reason was that he had inextricable connections with several families who ran underground businesses in Jingmen Island. In front of the garden in the courtyard, Jiang Mentian was focused on trimming the flowers and plants, while two strong men stood at the gate of the courtyard like door gods. Master Jiang. A lean youth strode into the courtyard and quickly came to Jiang Mentian's side. Jiang Mentian frowned and said with a displeased expression, "Xiaohu, did you forget the rules I set? Unless it's urgent, you're not allowed to disturb me when I'm trimming the plants." The lean youth forced a smile and said, "Master Jiang, I originally didn't want to disturb you." However, Huang Shiqing and his men came back with a woman. They've already set up a formation in the training field, as if they're waiting for someone important to come. Jiang Mentian raised his brows and lightly said, "You mean Huang Shiqing? That arrogant guy, who once threatened to change the name of our Hero's Crest Dojo to their Huang family's Huang Dojo. Did he cause trouble outside?" "Master Jiang, it's Huang Shiyang, Huang Shiqing's younger brother. His arm was broken. By the way, the one who broke Huang Shiyang's arm was the woman they brought back." Jiang Mentian shook his head and sighed. Those Huang brothers are getting more and more outrageous in recent years. Originally I saw that he was a promising talent, that's why I taught him some real skills. Moreover, we handed over some of our dojo's external businesses to him. I didn't expect him to become so arrogant and despotic. Looks like I've become lazy these past few years and didn't discipline him properly. What should we do now, Master Jiang? Asked the lean youth quickly. Since Huang Shiqing brought him back to our dojo, it means that he's going to use our dojo's name to fight with others. Though we know that this matter has nothing to do with us, others won't believe it. Jiang Mentian was silent for a moment and then said, "Wait for me. I'll trim this potted plant first, and then I'll go teach that brat a lesson." "All right." A glint flashed in the lean youth's eyes. He immediately retreated a few steps and bowed his head, waiting quietly. The Hero's Crest Dojo occupied a large area, and the training field in the front courtyard was as big as a regular football field. At the moment, Han Qingwu was tied to a pillar and her mouth was stuffed with something. Huang Shiqing, however, was sitting on a chair 10 meters away in front of her, quietly sipping tea. Behind him, there were more than a dozen young men with strong physiques and insolent expressions. They crossed their arms and looked at Han Qingwu maliciously. Several tens of meters away from them, dozens of instructors and students of the Hero's Crest Dojo looked at them curiously, yet none of them came over to ask anything. They looked at Huang Shiqing's arrogant appearance with dread on their faces. Less than 10 minutes later, 4 black SUVs rushed into the gate of the Hero's Crest Dojo. The old man guarding the gate post shouted as the 4 cars rushed inside and stopped in front of a row of 2-story buildings. 2 burly men got off the SUVs and strode to the front of a student of the dojo. They beat him down without any words and brought him to the window of the car where Tan Xiu was. As the window was slowly opened, Tan Xiu glanced at the student who was caught and lightly asked, "Did your Hero's Crest Dojo catch a woman?" The student's face turned red. He raised his head and glared at Tan Xiu, shouting, "That's right. It was Huang Shiqing from our dojo who brought some people to catch her. Who are you? You dare to cause trouble in our Hero's Crest Dojo? Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to come back alive? Oh, it seems I've come to a den of thieves. Tell me, where are Huang Shiqing and the woman who was caught?" Tan Xiu sighed and asked with a cold face. Martial arts field, on the left. The student shouted. The two burly men released the student and returned to their cars. The four SUVs then rushed directly to the martial arts field. A minute later, the four SUVs had rushed into the martial arts field. Tan Xiu, who was sitting in the car, could clearly see Han Qinggu tied up on the martial arts field, as well as Huang Shiqing, who was sitting on a chair and drinking tea. At this moment, Huang Shiqing had just picked up his teacup when he saw the four black SUVs rushing in. His complexion slightly changed. When the four cars stopped about 20 meters away from them, 8 men in black suits with extremely cold looks got out of the cars. His eyes finally fell on Tan Xiu, who just got out of the car. Driving 4 cars with such a small number of people is quite ostentatious. Huang Shiqing put down his teacup and looked at Tan Xiu with disdain. He then casually lowered his head and played with the nails of his right hand with his left hand. Tan Xiu looked at the scene in front of him and secretly sighed. He didn't expect that Han Qinggu would get into such trouble when she came out to play. And it seemed that the trouble this time was not small. However, he didn't blame Han Qinggu because he knew very well that Han Qinggu wouldn't take the initiative to provoke others. He walked to the front of Han Qinggu and saw the tears in her eyes gushing out and sliding down her face. Tan Xiu gently untied the rope for her and took the thing stuffed in her mouth, saying, "Did you get beaten? Does it hurt?" "Woo." The moment Han Qinggu was completely untied, she directly threw herself into Tan Xiu's embrace. The feeling of being wronged made her cry like rain and pear blossoms. She tightly hugged Tan Xiu with both hands as if Tan Xiu's embrace was the safest place for her. "Io, Io." A hero saving a damsel in distress, and a beauty throwing herself at him. What a touching scene. Dao, who was standing behind Huang Shiqing, whistled and laughed loudly. Tan Xiu didn't push her away directly and let her hug him for a while. Then, he patted her back and gently pushed her away. He then looked at Huang Shiqing, who was sitting on the chair and didn't stop him at all. "Do you mind if I take her away now?" Tan Xiu's voice was very calm, but it was mixed with coldness. Huang Shiqing raised his head and the disdainful expression on his face turned more intense. He crossed his legs and took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it up and took a puff before sneering, "Do you think my Huang Martial Arts School is a place where you can come and go as you please?" Huang Martial Arts School. Tan Xiu raised his brows and lightly said, "If I'm not mistaken, this should be the Hero's Crest Martial Arts School, right? How did it become the Huang Martial Arts School?" "It may be called the Hero's Crest Martial Arts School now, but I'm highly regarded by the deputy schoolmaster. Won't I have the final say in this school when they retire in the future?" "Kid, you're still young, but you must have heard of our martial arts school's fame, right? I really didn't expect that you would have the guts to come here to save people. I really admire you." "Forget it, I don't want to waste my time on a nobody like you," said Tan Xiu. "I came here to save people, and I've already saved them, so it's time for me to leave now. If you dare to stop me, I can only tear down your martial arts school's signboard and destroy it." At this time, Jiang Mentian, along with more than a dozen instructors from the martial arts school, all of whom were experts he had personally trained, came to the crowd. He happened to hear Tan Xiu's words and was about to reprimand Huang Shiji, but his brows slightly furrowed and he coldly snorted, "What a big tone. Do you think you can tear down my Hero's Crest Martial Arts School's signboard?" Deputy Schoolmaster. Although Huang Shiqing was arrogant, he didn't dare to act rashly in front of Jiang Mentian. It must be said that the person he feared and dreaded the most in the entire martial arts school was Jiang Mentian. He quickly got up from his chair and respectfully gave the seat to Jiang Mentian. Jiang Mentian coldly glanced at him and sat straight on the chair. He then looked at Tan Xiu and said again, "I shouldn't have paid attention to the affairs of you youngsters. But since you've caused a ruckus in the martial arts school, I have no choice but to come forward." "What? How do you want to solve this?" Huang Shiqing, who stood next to Jiang Mentian, fiercely shouted, "Deputy Schoolmaster, you can't spare that bitch. She broke my younger brother's arm, and I can't let this matter go. Trash. Jiang Mentian angrily cursed. Huang Shiqing's expression changed and he immediately shut his mouth in embarrassment. Tan Xiu shook his head and lightly said, "You must be the deputy schoolmaster, right? Your strength is not bad, and you can be regarded as one of the top martial artists. Since your people won't let me go, I don't want to leave now. I'll give you a chance to expel him and those people behind him from the martial arts school. I'll no longer pursue this matter with your martial arts school. Else what?" Jiang Mentian sneered and asked. Chapter 545. Tan Xiu coldly said, "Otherwise, no one from your martial arts school will be able to walk out of here standing today." Clap, clap, clap. Jiang Mentian applauded and laughed heartily, but a contemptuous look flashed in his eyes. Dozens of instructors and students from the martial arts school surrounded them, totaling 50 to 60 people. Each and every one of them looked at Tan Xiu's group with disdainful eyes. Is this guy stupid? Doesn't he know where we are? What an idiot! How dare he come to our martial arts school to be so arrogant and domineering? Does he want to die? It seems like 7 or 8 years ago, some brats came to our martial arts school to make trouble. Their legs were broken and they were thrown out like dead dogs. Later on, the whole families of those brats couldn't stay in Jingmen Island anymore and were forced to leave with their tails between their legs. What a moron! Does he think he can be arrogant here just because he brought 8 bodyguards? He really doesn't know how to write the word death. The instructors and students of the Heroes Crest Martial Arts School discussed among themselves. Many of them were even gearing up for a fight, waiting for Vice Schoolmaster Jiang Mention's order to ruthlessly teach Tan Xiu's group a lesson. Han Qinggu pulled Tan Xiu's sleeve and said with a worried expression, "Let's leave first, Tan Xiu. This is a martial arts school, and they seem to be very powerful." Tan Xiu shook his head and looked at Jiang Mention's disdainful expression. Then, he lightly said, "I gave you a chance, but you don't want it. Then don't blame me for being ruthless. Do it, break everyone's legs." Each of the 8 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall possessed strength far beyond a martial arts grandmaster. Following Tan Xiu's order, the 8 people pounced toward the crowd like fierce tigers. They were fast and powerful, knocking down more than a dozen people from the Heroes Crest Martial Arts School just as they came into contact with them. What? Jiang Mentian didn't expect that the people brought by Tan Xiu would act so suddenly. What he didn't expect was that the strength displayed by these 8 people was extremely powerful. Even he would find it difficult to deal with them at the same time. Stop! Jiang Mentian let out a furious roar. However, the 8 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall had no intention of stopping since they only obeyed Tan Xiu's orders. Following the lightning-fast attacks and powerful attacks, the 8 of them spread out. They were surrounded and attacked, and they kept knocking down their enemies. Huang Shiqing stood beside Jiang Mentian, but he did not immediately make a move. His heart skipped a beat as he watched the 8 experts beat his senior and junior brothers to the ground in a completely one-sided manner. He also watched several instructors with profound martial arts foundations being knocked down. How could this be? How could these 8 people be so strong? Any one of them was probably stronger than him. One had to know that he was an expert who had achieved great success in martial arts. He was only half a step away from breaking through to the realm of martial arts grandmaster. Then, he could be on par with the deputy dojo master, Jiang Mentan. Could it be, were these 8 people all martial arts masters? For a moment, Huang Shiqing was horrified to realize that he seemed to have gotten himself into big trouble. Time passed in the complete torture. 2 minutes and 5 seconds later, apart from Jiang Mentian and Huang Shiqing, only the dozen people brought by Jiang Mentian were still standing. "Young man, tell your men to stop." Upon seeing the 8 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall gather again and rush toward them, Jiang Mentian immediately shouted in a deep voice. Tan Xiu raised his arm and sneered, "What? Do you regret it? Do you want to beg for mercy? Regret? Jiang Mentian snorted. Beg for mercy? Jiang Mentian, haven't heard anyone dare to talk to me like that for nearly 20 years. Young man, the people you brought are very powerful. I'm afraid I'm not much stronger than them. But are you sure you still want to continue? I'm very sure, answered Tan Xiu. Think about it clearly. They are very powerful, but you should know the truth that 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. The number of people from my Hero's Crest martial school here is only 1/10 of the entire martial school. If we call all of them, can your men knock down everyone even if they are good at fighting? Also, are you sure you and your woman can come out unscathed once they are besieged? Are you threatening me? Tan Xiu burst into laughter and said, I'm afraid of everything, but I'm not afraid of being threatened by others. Other than this guy, get rid of everyone else for me. The 8 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall moved again. This time, even though Huang Shiqing knew that he was not their match, he still braced himself and rushed out. However, a lightning-fast fist hit his face, while an iron pillar-like leg kicked his waist. He screamed as he was kicked 7 or 8 meters away and heavily crashed to the ground. Kacha! After knocking down more than a dozen people, the 8 big men followed Tan Xiu's order and broke their calf bones. Not only them, but the calf bones of those who had just been knocked down were also broken in a very short time. Enough! Seeing the actions of the 8 big men, Jiang Mentian suddenly got up from his chair. His eyes looked as though they could shoot fire as he stared straight at Tan Xiu and shouted. Tan Xiu flicked his wrist and lightly smiled, I haven't fought for a long time. I actually want to practice, but you're too weak. You're not worth my time. Why don't you call the strongest one over? Humph, brat. Jiang Mentian coldly snorted and said, since today's matter is doomed to not end well, then all of you will stay here today. There's no need for the strongest one to come out. I can clean all of you up. Tan Xiu shook his head and sighed, sometimes self-confidence is a good thing, but overestimating one's strength will result in very tragic consequences. Which one of you wants to teach him a lesson? If you win, I'll reward you with 50 cents. I'll do it. A big man stepped forward and spoke in a deep voice. Since you want to show off, then do it well. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said. Remember, if you dare to lose my people, I'll throw you out to manage the business. Understood. The big man's complexion changed and his expression suddenly turned solemn. He didn't want to be sent out to manage the business. Otherwise, he wouldn't have time to practice. At this time, the instructors and students of the Hero's Crest Martial School, who were rolling on the ground in pain, endured the pain and looked at Jiang Mentian and the big man. Many of them even roared, Deputy Schoolmaster, avenge us and kill them all. Those damn bastards. My legs are gone. Deputy Schoolmaster, you're a Grandmaster expert. You must make them pay 100 times the price. These damn bastards, my leg is finished. Deputy Master, you are a master, you must make them pay 100 times the price. Kill them. Let them know that our Hero's Crest Martial School is not to be trifled with. Kill them. Let them know that our Hero's Crest Martial School is not to be trifled with. They looked at Jiang Mentian with eyes full of eagerness and hatred when they looked at Tan Xiu and the 8 big men. Although they had rarely seen their deputy schoolmaster fight in recent years, they were well aware of his strength. Once a person at the Grandmaster level took action, he would definitely be able to clean up all the opponents. Jiang Mentian snorted coldly and rushed toward the strong man. His footsteps were extremely steady, and his speed was also very fast. After sprinting in front of the strong man, he did not hesitate to smash his fists into his opponent's face. Humph, the sturdy man snorted coldly and kicked his leg at an extremely fast speed. However, it was this kick that swept away Jiang Mentian's arm and landed a kick on Jiang Mentian's chest. Ravage. It was a completely one-sided ravage. Jiang Mentian couldn't see the difference in speed and strength before he was attacked. But when the big man went all out, he couldn't even block or dodge. The raindrop-like fists greeted Jiang Mentian again and again. The severe pain made it difficult for Jiang Mentian to breathe. How was this possible? Jiang Mentian's eyes were full of pain and despair. He never dreamed that the big man didn't go all out. The strength he displayed now was his real level. But were they still human? He was already a martial arts grandmaster. There were only a few people in the whole country who could be stronger than him. These monsters, where did they come from? Were they the same kind of people as the schoolmaster? Bam! A kick directly hit Jiang Mentian's face. As Jiang Mentian's vision turned black, his body was whipped more than 10 meters away and smashed next to the iron pole where Han Qinggu had been tied up. Boss, the task is complete. Tan Xiao nodded with satisfaction and said, go back and get 2 essence-gathering pills. Everyone else will get 1 each. Consider it your reward. Thank you, boss. The 8 big men cupped their fists in surprise. The instructors and students of the martial arts school, who were sitting on the ground, were dumbfounded as they looked at Jiang Mentian, who was lying like a dead dog under the iron pole. Their eyes were full of disbelief. How was this possible? The war god in their hearts, the deputy schoolmaster with the strength of a martial arts grandmaster, couldn't even fight back and was beaten down by others? This was unscientific. Could it be that the big man was more powerful than a grandmaster? For a time, fear hit their hearts like a tide, making them feel cold all over and their hands and feet cold. Tan Xiao slowly walked to Jiang Mentian's side, grabbed his collar and lifted him up. Then, he sneered and said, weren't you quite arrogant just now? Do you think you're invincible just because you've reached the Grandmaster realm? In my opinion, you're just a clown who takes care of trivial matters for others. After that, he directly threw Jiang Mentian, who was in pain all over his body, to the ground and said again, call the strongest one here. If he's really capable and can let me move my hands and feet, I can spare you this time and keep the name of your martial arts school. Cough, cough, Jiang Mentian spat out a mouthful of blood. With a pale face, he took out his mobile phone from his pocket, only to find that it had been broken by the attack and could no longer be used. Whoosh, a hazy figure came from a distance. Chapter 546. The figure's speed was so fast that the naked eye could hardly catch it. In just a few seconds, it had already sprinted over 200 meters and arrived in front of Tan Xiao. No need to call me. Since little brother wants to see me, I'll naturally fulfill your wish, said a sage-like, long-haired, barefooted old man with a smile. He seemed to be indifferent to the 50 to 60 badly beaten martial arts school members on the ground. Tang Xiao glanced at him and brushed past him. He then walked to the chair where Jiang Mentian had just sat and sat down. He then crossed his legs and smilingly said, I've never seen you before, but I've never seen you before. But since you're a kindred spirit, your strength must be good. How much of your power did you use to unleash your speed just now? 20%. The barefooted old man still maintained his smile and slowly stretched out 2 fingers. That's amazing. Tan Xiao applauded and smilingly said. To be able to achieve this with only 20% of your speed, it seems that your cultivation is not low. But can you tell me how much of your speed could be maintained if the array covering the entire martial arts school wasn't activated? The barefooted old man's expression finally changed. The smile on his face receded and his eyes flickered. He stared deeply at Tan Xiao and asked, Who are you, little brother? Tan Xiao, replied Tan Xiao lightly. I've never heard of you. The barefooted old man shook his head and said, But you can see through the array I activated. That means you're very powerful, even more powerful than I expected. That person from Haiqing province came to me in the past, but he couldn't see through the mystery here. Haiqing province? Miao Wentong. Do you know Miao Wentong? Asked Tan Xiao with a surprised expression. The barefooted old man nodded and said with a smile, that kid's talent is good, and his fortuitous encounter is also good. His cultivation level is already considered as an outstanding genius. However, compared to you, he's probably overshadowed. That's right, if my guess is correct, you're from the Everlasting Feast Hall, right? How did you see that? Asked Tan Xiu. The barefooted old man smilingly said, aside from the Everlasting Feast Hall, there's only that Amur tiger in China who can bring out 8 experts of such strength at once. However, the Amur tiger had been concealing its strength in the last few decades and rarely came out. It was even more unwilling to set foot on Jingmen Island. So I guess it can only be the Everlasting Feast Hall. After all, the Everlasting Feast Hall's headquarters is on Jingmen Island. Buzz, the roar of cars could be heard from afar. 2 Audis drove directly over and stopped in front of everyone. Tan Xiu had originally planned to ask the barefooted old man about the Manchurian tiger, but now that he was suddenly interrupted by someone, he immediately frowned. The car door opened. 4 burly men in suits quickly stood in front of the car, while a young man opened the rear door of the car behind and respectfully invited a middle-aged man out. What's going on? Someone really dares to cause trouble at the Hero's Crest dojo? After Ouyang Wenjin got out of the car, he looked at the injured members of the Hero's Crest Martial Club on the ground and suddenly showed a shocked expression. Especially when he saw Jiang Mentian was also beaten miserably and sitting on the ground at this moment, his face was ashen. He was shocked to the point that it was difficult to be more shocked. He came here to visit Jiang Mentian, but he didn't expect to encounter such a scene. At this moment, Tan Xiu had already recognized Ouyang Wenjin's identity. He had seen Ouyang Wenjin at the charity party, but they had never talked face to face. The barefooted old man glanced at Ouyang Wenjin and no longer paid attention to him. Instead, he looked at Tan Xiu and continued, "Little brother, can you consider this old man's face and forget about today's matter?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not easy for me to meet a kindred spirit, so it's natural for me to have a good spar. I've always heard that China is a great country with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Now that I'm fortunate enough to meet one, it's really a pity to waste this opportunity." The barefooted old man shook his head and smilingly said, "If you can cultivate for a few more decades, perhaps this old man will be interested in exchanging pointers with you. But little brother is too young, so I think it's better to forget about it." Tan Xiu glanced at the barefooted old man and directly got up from the chair. He then cupped his fists toward Ouyang Wenjin and said, "What brings you here, Patriarch Ouyang?" Ouyang Wenjin felt that Tan Xiu looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. After hesitating for a moment, he smilingly said, "I actually came here to visit Deputy Headmaster Jiang. I didn't expect to encounter such a situation. Little brother is..." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "I don't think it's necessary to address me as little brother. If Ouyang Lulu and Ouyang Lei knew that they were a generation lower than them, I'm afraid they would keep nagging in my ear. I'm Tan Xiu, Patriarch Ouyang should have heard of me." Tan Xiu. Ouyang Wenjin looked surprised and immediately said, "You're Tan Xiu. You're really a man of striking appearance. It seems my daughter has a good eye." Cough, cough. Tan Xiu understood Ouyang Wenjin's meaning. He coughed twice and forced a smile. "Patriarch Ouyang, Lulu and I are actually good friends. I hope you don't misunderstand." Ouyang Wenjin waved his hand and smilingly said, "You youngsters should deal with your own matters. But why are you here?" "You're..." Tan Xiu pointed to Han Qinggu and said, "These people from the Hero's Crest Martial School are too arrogant. They even kidnapped my teacher and brought her here in broad daylight. I came here to ask for her, but they actually wanted us to stay and said that we would pay a painful price. Hence, some unpleasantness arose." Upon hearing this, Ouyang Wenjin suddenly glanced at Jiang Mentian with a strange expression. The barefooted old man himself didn't know what exactly happened. His complexion sank upon hearing Tan Xiu's words. He then looked at Jiang Mentian, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground and unable to stand up. He coldly said, Jiang Mentian, I handed over the martial school to you, but I didn't expect you to have such big guts. You even dare to kidnap a woman. It has nothing to do with me, master. Jiang Mentian bitterly said. It's all Huang Shiqing's doing. I only learned about it later. But when I came here, I heard this. This man said that he wanted to tear down our martial school's signboard, so I... Who's Huang Shiqing? The barefooted old man shouted in a deep voice. In an instant, dozens of pairs of eyes looked at Huang Shiqing, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground with a pale complexion. The barefooted old man's eyes turned cold. He flicked his finger and an airflow instantly shot out, penetrating Huang Shiqing's glabella and directly killing him. Hiss! Most of the people in the surroundings had a drastic change in expression and couldn't help but gasp. They didn't expect that their master, who had always been indifferent to worldly affairs, would be so ruthless and merciless that he directly killed Huang Shiqing. Of course, what made them shudder the most was the terrifying ability of their master. He could kill someone with just a flick of his finger, and from a distance of more than 10 meters. This method was really terrifying. Upon seeing the barefooted old man's action, Tan Xiu secretly sighed inwardly. Although he didn't want to let this matter go, the barefooted old man had already decided to settle this matter peacefully. It would be inexcusable if he continued to be aggressive. After a moment of silence, he calmly said, since Huang Shiqing is dead, let's just forget about this matter. However, I can accompany you if you're willing to spar with me. Having said that, he fiercely stomped on the ground. Star force gushed out from the soles of his feet and drilled into the ground in an instant. Boom! A faint sound of thunder rang in everyone's ears. Strange. The sun is out, so where did the thunder come from? Everyone subconsciously looked up at the sky. The barefooted old man raised his head, and his expression instantly changed. He quickly took out a jade tablet from his bosom, but the jade tablet cracked under his gaze, eventually breaking into more than a dozen pieces. You! The barefooted old man suddenly looked up and his eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared at Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu lightly smiled and said, there's a saying I believe you've heard before, you can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't measure the sea with a pail. As a fellow practitioner, I hope you won't be fooled by my performance. Appearance? The barefooted old man's heart trembled. Suddenly, he was enlightened. A problem that had troubled him for many years was instantly solved. I've learned something. As the barefooted old man cupped his fists, a surging aura erupted from his body. Everyone present felt a strong pressure coming from the barefooted old man. The pressure made many people retreat, and even those who were paralyzed on the ground crawled to the distance with difficulty. Tan Xiu waved his hand and a wave of aura protected Han Qinggu and Ouyang Wenjin. His eyes were full of curiosity as he carefully sized up the barefooted old man. He didn't expect that because of his words, the barefooted old man actually had an epiphany in a certain aspect of his state of mind, causing his state of mind to improve by leaps and bounds. A few minutes later, the barefooted old man directly sat cross-legged and closed his eyes, immersing himself in cultivation. Tan Xiu sighed inwardly. It seemed that it was impossible for him to spar with the barefooted old man today. However, he was very satisfied. The higher the barefooted old man's cultivation, the more he could display his strength. Family head Ouyang, I still have other matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Tan Xiu grabbed Han Qingwu's wrist and nodded to Ouyang Wenjin. Then, he turned around and walked toward the 4 black SUVs. Ouyang Wenjin loudly said, Tang Xiu, do you have time tomorrow? How about coming to my Ouyang family for a visit? All right. Tan Xiu replied. After he sat in the car, the 4 cars roared and left. After leaving the Heroes Crest Martial School, Tan Xiu turned his head and glanced at the back. He then lightly said, if I remember correctly, that Huang Shiqing fellow has a younger brother with a broken arm. I don't want any trouble in the future. Do you know what to do? I'll handle it, boss. A strong man on the front seat respectfully replied. Han Qingwu's expression slightly changed. She hurriedly grabbed Tan Xiu's arm and said, Tan Xiu, you want to kill Huang Shiyang? Who do you think Huang Shiyang will blame this debt on in the future now that Huang Shiqing is dead? Asked Tang Xiu lightly. Huang Shiqing can capture you for his younger brother, so Huang Shiyang can seek revenge for his older brother. He will find a way to kill you in the future, and he will even blame it on me. Since you already know that there will be trouble in the future, why not cut the weeds and eliminate the roots now? Today's third chapter has ended. Seeking monthly votes for support. Chapter 547. At the First People's Hospital of Jingmen Island. There was only one bed in the VIP ward with a lot of potted plants in the corner. Aside from a TV, there was even a refrigerator. Huang Shiyang rested his head on a pillow with his arm in a cast and a bandage. The shame in his eyes was particularly thick. There was a young girl sitting at the bedside. Although she looked obedient on the surface, a look of disgust flashed in her eyes from time to time. Wen, call my brother and ask him if he's done with that bitch yet? The girl was silent for a moment. She silently picked up her mobile and was about to dial the number when the ward's door was violently pushed open. A youth with a crew cut rushed to the bed and called out with a panicked face, "Second brother, quickly pack up and run." Something big happened. Huang Shiyang's expression changed and he quickly asked, "What happened? Where's my brother?" "Big brother is dead. He was killed by the schoolmaster himself," said the youth with a crew cut urgently. "I suspect that the other party won't let this matter go and will deal with you. You can't stay in the hospital anymore. Quickly pack up and run away from Jingmen Island. The farther the better." Huang Shiyang abruptly sat up straight with disbelief on his face. He involuntarily exclaimed, "What the hell are you talking about? My brother, how could he die? How could the schoolmaster kill my brother himself? Second brother, you've provoked a terrifying person. It's because of you that our martial arts school has been destroyed by them," said the youth with the crew cut bitterly. All the 50 to 60 instructors and students in the school had their legs broken. Even the deputy schoolmaster was no exception. The schoolmaster suddenly appeared. Although this matter was settled, he killed Big Brother with his own hands. His purpose is very simple, to resolve the enmity between both sides. Huang Shiyang's eyes turned red as a crazy resentment burst out from his eyes. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Wen, quickly help me pack up. Third brother, tell me who the other party is." "He's called Tan Xiu. He should be that woman's man," said the youth with a crew cut. "He's not old and looks like he's in his early 20s, but each of the 8 bodyguards he brought is very terrifying. Our deputy master is an expert at the supreme power level, but any one of the 8 bodyguards can beat him to a pulp without him being able to fight back. That's right, he seems to be someone from the everlasting feast hall." Huang Shiyang's heart trembled as fear filled his heart. He was well aware of the vice dojo master's strength. He was a martial Dao grandmaster who had presided over the Hero's Crest dojo for a decade or two and rarely had a worthy opponent. Everlasting Feast Hall, Tan Xiu. I'll remember it. The fear in Huang Shiyang's heart quickly disappeared and was replaced by a resentment. After getting out of bed, he immediately changed his clothes. Although his arm was in the way, he still put on his coat and quickly left the ward a few minutes later. Everlasting Feast Hall. Tang Dong was wearing a suit and a pair of black sunglasses. He was standing straight by the window of the box, quietly looking at the parking lot in the distance. On the table behind him, there was a folder. The contents of the folder were very important. The private room. There was a knock on the door of the private room, and Gu Xiaoxue, who was wearing a white dress, stepped into the room. "Tang school Tang S Tang S Tang 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 S Tang Tang and Tang Xiu's master. I'll wait for him here since he still needs half an hour," Tang Dong said with a smile. Gu Xiaoxue, our businesses are very similar. If possible, I hope we can cooperate in some aspects. For example. Gu Xiaoxue lightly smiled. As far as I know, the Everlasting Feast Hall has many experts. Our seaside straight manner's main ingredient is fierce beast's flesh and blood. If it's possible, I can buy it from you. Gu Xiaoxue smiled. Mr. Tang, about this issue, you can talk to our boss after you see him. I believe he will be able to satisfy you. Alright, then. I'll have a good chat with him after we talk about serious matters. Tang Dong smiled. Imperial capital, Yao family. Yao Qingzuan's complexion was livid. He sat on the armchair without saying a word. Yao Qingqing, however, clenched his fists with blue veins throbbing on his forehead. The middle-aged man standing next to him, wearing glasses, lowered his head at the moment with a nervous expression on his face. Finally, Yao Qingzuan gritted his teeth and said, Tang Guosheng has been enduring for a long time and deliberately let us trample on his face. I'm afraid he's plotting something big. I could clearly see the Tang family's veins before and was confident that I could pinch their lifeline. But now I understand that it's something the Tang family deliberately put on the surface. Dad, what should we do next? Yao Qingqing angrily said. Clam Island and Resting Cemetery Island have been taken by the Tang family, so our family's plan will be put on hold. Furthermore, Qingtang is now missing and we don't know if he's dead or alive. The information he brought with him is very important to our Yao family. Yao Qingzuan clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, since they have taken the 2 islands, we can only choose another place. We can't estimate the depth of the Tang family, so we need to avoid them for the time being. Order our Yao family and the families that have a good relationship with us not to have any conflict with the Tang family in the near future. Dad, are we just going to let this matter go? Asked Yao Qingqing. Of course not. Yao Qingzuan snorted coldly. I invited the one from the northeast 2 days ago, and he should be coming to the imperial capital in a few days. As long as we have his help, let alone 1 Tang family, even 10 Tangs won't be our Yao family's match. You mean, the Amur tiger? Asked Yao Qingqing in shock. Yao Qingzuan nodded and said, I saved the Amur tiger's life in the past, so he owes our Yao family a huge favor. Originally, I didn't intend to use this favor to deal with the Tang family because I thought that we could easily destroy the Tang family by ourselves. But I didn't expect that the Tang family had hidden so deeply. It seems like we have no choice but to use this favor now. Yao Qingqing's expression moved and he quickly said, Dad, should we spread the news about our Yao family inviting the Amur tiger to the other forces? With the deterrence of the Amur tiger, I'm afraid those centrist forces will also lean toward our Yao family. Let's not talk about it for the time being. Yao Qingzuan shook his head and said, wait until we get rid of the Tang family with the help of the Amur tiger's power. I'm afraid those centrist forces will lean toward our Yao family when the time comes if we can have a good relationship with him. Yao Qingqing thought for a moment before he nodded with a smile and said, I understand, Dad. I really didn't expect that you still have such a trump card. The Tang family, Jingmen Island, Everlasting Feast Hall. After Tan Xiu came back, he brought Han Qingguo, who had been silent for a while, to his residence. Just as he was about to talk to her, a core member of the Everlasting Feast Hall rushed over and told him that Tang Dong was waiting for him. Teacher Han, I have something to deal with. You take a good rest first, and we'll talk again during dinner. Han Qingguo was silent for a moment before she said, can you not call me Teacher Han later? My name is Han Qingguo, and people close to me call me Qingguo. Tan Xiu slightly furrowed his brows, but he still nodded and said, I understand. 5 or 6 minutes later, Tan Xiu came to Tang Dong's private box. Looking at Tang Dong, who got up to greet him, Tan Xiu said with a smile, Uncle Dong, is there any news from the imperial capital? Nothing can be hidden from you, said Tang Dong with a smile. That's right, Our Tang family has obtained Clam Island and Resting Cemetery Island, and the official documents have been approved. All the documents are here, and First Uncle has ordered that you can do whatever you want on these 2 islands later. What's the reaction from the Yao family? Asked Tan Xiu. What else can they do? Tang Dong said with a smile. Our Tang family moved very fast. All the joints have been opened and the approval documents have been obtained. Even if the Yao family has tried their best, there is no way to reverse the situation. I reckon that the old man of the Yao family is now stamping with rage. A smile outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth as he nodded and said, the head of the Yao family will definitely be very angry since we have intercepted them. However, I reckon that the Yao family will also start to re-examine our Tang family. At this time, what the Tang family must do is to restrain themselves, and at the same time, we must also take precautions to prevent the Yao family from being unable to swallow this and act against us again. Tang Dong firmly engraved Tan Xiu's words in his heart. He nodded and said, I understand, and I believe First Uncle will also understand. I will also tell my father what you said, and let the elders discuss it properly. Then let's not talk about this topic anymore, said Tan Xiu. I also want to change the topic. Tang Dong said with a smile. The Everlasting Feast Hall has a lot of experts. Do you want to find time to hunt in the sea? To tell you the truth, our seaside Strait Manor is in short supply of fierce beast meat. The supply simply cannot meet the demand. In order to make more money, you see. Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment before he couldn't help laughing and said, don't worry about it. I guarantee that the seaside Strait Manor's supply of fierce beast meat will be fully satisfied after some time. As a matter of fact, I've been scheming to get those 2 islands, and one of my plans is to rear fierce beasts on one of the islands. What? Tang Dong was dumbfounded. Fierce beasts could also be reared in captivity. Don't be shocked, Uncle Dong. Tan Xiu said with a smile. As long as you're strong enough, even fierce beasts can be reared in captivity. I'll personally accompany you to visit the place after the scale has been set up. Tang Dong gulped down his saliva and said with a shocked face, Tan Xiu, this move of yours is simply too crazy. Of course, it would be great if you can really rear fierce beasts. Uncle Dong, those people sent by the Seaside Strait Manor are now undergoing training. I'm sure it won't take long for their strength to advance by leaps and bounds. I think the most important task for you now is to select your trusted aides and train their talents. The Yao family wants to expand the scale of their armed forces, so our Tang family can't fall behind. Chapter 548. The warm sun shone on the earth, and the gentle sea breeze brought a cool aura. In front of the Everlasting Feast Hall's parking lot, 50 experts stood neatly on the edge of the parking lot with solemn expressions, quietly waiting for Tan Xiu's order. Dressed in a white dress, Gu Xiaoxue stood beside Ji Qimei with a bit of regret in her eyes. Xiaoxue, Ji Qimei needs to go with me. Light and dark have also left, so you can only stay here. We'll come back after we've dealt with the threat on Resting Cemetery Island. When the time comes, I'll leave the matter of raising fierce beasts in captivity to you, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Don't worry. Gu Xiaoxue gently nodded. I'll protect Master's safety. Tan Xiu nodded in response. His eyes then fell on the barefooted old man with long hair draped over his shoulders in the distance. He looked like he was taking a leisurely stroll, yet his speed was very fast, almost comparable to the extreme running speed of ordinary people. In just a few seconds, the barefooted old man had already stood in front of them with a smile. Daoist Tang, thank you. The barefooted old man clenched his fists and bowed to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu faintly smiled and raised his hands. 2 streams of qi instantly supported the barefooted old man's arms. As he straightened his waist, he lightly smiled and said, You're welcome. May I know how to address you, Senior? Daoist Tang can call me Daoist Su Yang, said the barefooted old man with a smile. Taoist Su Yang, are you here to accept my challenge? Tan Xiu nodded. Although I'm well aware that finding an evenly matched opponent is a happy event worthy of celebration, my cultivation has skyrocketed recently. I'm afraid that Taoist Tang. The barefooted old man shook his head and smilingly said. Ji Qimei, who stood behind Tan Xiu, coldly snorted. A monstrous aura rushed toward Taoist Su Yang and enveloped him in a fraction of a second. What? Taoist Su Yang's body turned stiff and a horrified expression burst out from his eyes. After his eyes fell on Ji Qimei, a fear and madness that came from the bottom of his heart grew inside him. Even though that monstrous aura had only flashed for a moment, his entire body felt cold. Ever since Taoist Su Yang broke through, he found that the world in front of him was completely different from before. The advancement of a great realm filled his heart with confidence. Even if he encountered that person from the northeast, he felt that he could compete with him. But who was this old woman in front of him? Taoist Su Yang could clearly feel the aura she released. If this old woman wanted to kill him, just the aura she released would be enough to obliterate him. It felt as if he was just a drop of water, and the old woman in front of him was a vast ocean. Xiyang greets Senior. Beads of sweat appeared on Taoist Su Yang's forehead as he bowed in fear. Tan Xiu slightly furrowed his brows. He turned to look at Ji Qimei with a displeased expression and lightly said, "All right. There are too many people who judge a book by its cover. It's normal for him to have such thoughts. You don't need to scare him." "Yes." Ji Qimei hurriedly nodded. Even though Tan Xiu's current cultivation was far from hers, Tan Xiu's once proud and arrogant figure that stood above the myriad of races had long been deeply imprinted in the depths of her soul. Therefore, she respected Tan Xiu and was also afraid of Tan Xiu. Taoist Su Yang was dumbfounded. He looked up at the respectful Ji Qimei and then at the displeased Tan Xiu. His lips squirmed a few times, but he didn't know what to say. He found it hard to believe that a terrifying powerhouse that he had to look up to was actually so submissive and respectful in front of Tan Xiu. Did he really judge a book by its cover? Could it be that Tan Xiu's cultivation was more powerful than this terrifying powerhouse? Tan Xiu looked at Taoist Su Yang and said, "Since you don't want to accept my challenge, then I won't force you. Now that you've thanked me, you can go back if there's nothing else." "Taoist Tang, there's actually something I want to discuss with you this time," said Taoist Su Yang quickly. "Say it." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said. "Thanks to your guidance, my state of mind has had a breakthrough and my cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds," said Taoist Su Yang. "Therefore, I plan to go to the northeast to challenge that Amur tiger. If Taoist Tang has time, can you come with me?" "I haven't had the time to ask you before," said Tan Xiu in surprise. "Who exactly is this Amur tiger you mentioned? Is he a very powerful cultivator?" "That's right. He's indeed a powerful cultivator," said Taoist Su Yang. "Decades ago, his cultivation was almost the same as mine. Rumors have it that his strength has made a breakthrough in recent years. Therefore, I want to compare notes with him to measure the extent of my strength." "When will you go?" asked Tan Xiu after pondering for a moment. "I can go any time." "It depends on your arrangement," said Taoist Su Yang. Tan Xiu thought for a moment and then said, "I need to go to the sea to handle something. If you have time, you might as well come with me to play. We can set off immediately after we've dealt with the matter there." "All right." Taoist Su Yang directly agreed. Although he didn't know what Tan Xiu wanted to do in the sea, he could see that these people were obviously experts who had stepped into the cultivation world, and there was also a terrifying existence like Ji Qimei. He believed that they must have a very important purpose. "Get in the car." Tan Xiu called out and quickly entered the car parked at the side. 20 black cars slowly left the everlasting feast hall. After arriving at the port, they boarded the previous liner and rushed toward Clam Island and Resting Cemetery Island. In the evening, the liner docked at the northern section of Resting Cemetery Island. Following Tan Xiu's order, only 2 people were left on the liner, while the rest boarded the island. 10 people to form a group of 5. Try to capture the fierce beasts on the island alive and immediately send them to the center of the island. I'll be waiting for you there. After Tan Xiu issued the order, he, Ji Qimei, Daoist Su Yang, and the other 8 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall rushed toward the center of Resting Cemetery Island. The 8 experts carried a lot of things, which were the materials that Tan Xiu prepared to arrange a feng shui array. After arriving at the center of the island, Tan Xiu looked at Ji Qimei and asked, "Shall I arrange the array, or will you do it?" "What kind of array do you want to arrange, Venerable Lord?" Ji Qimei respectfully asked. "Consolidated metal array, spirit amassing array, and myriad killing sword array," Tan Xiu said. The spirit amassing array needs to be arranged with 36 layers of interlocking superimposed arrays. At the very least, the heaven and earth spiritual qi within a radius of hundreds of kilometers must be extracted to maintain the spiritual qi concentration on the island. "Leave this trivial matter to this subordinate, Venerable Lord," Ji Qimei said. "Go." Tan Xiu nodded. "After the array is arranged properly, we'll tame all the fierce beasts on the island." "Understood." Ji Qimei waved her hand and all the array materials in the hands of the 8 big men floated up. Along with her figure soaring into the sky, she instantly stood 100 meters above the island. Daoist Su Yang's complexion greatly changed and his pupils violently shrunk. After a moment of silence, he also soared into the sky and appeared far away from Ji Qimei, ready to see how she would arrange the array. As a matter of fact, he also knew how to arrange feng shui arrays, such as the Hero's Crest Martial School he had created a long time ago. In fact, he had arranged a feng shui array under the Hero's Crest Martial School. Although the power of the array was very small and could only increase his speed and gather weak spiritual qi once it was activated, it was already the limit of what he could do. Among the 3 arrays Tan Xiu had just mentioned, apart from the spirit amassing array, he had never heard of the other 2 arrays. Ji Qimei naturally saw Daoist Su Yang, but she didn't have the mood to pay attention to him. She was an immortal. Although she was very ordinary in the immortal world and her strength had fallen a lot, Daoist Su Yang's shallow cultivation was simply like an ant in her eyes. After observing the Resting Cemetery Island for a few moments, Ji Qimei's arms constantly waved as the materials in the bags flew in all directions. In just half a minute, all the materials had been deeply inserted into the island's underground. At the same time, her other hand constantly formed a rune seal. Array, rise. From the beginning to the end, it didn't take more than 3 minutes for Ji Qimei to raise her arms and shout. Buzz! In the dark, a special aura fluctuation rose on the Resting Cemetery Island. In the distance, Daoist Su Yang was dumbfounded as he looked at the changes on the island. He was shocked to find that the entire Resting Cemetery Island had unexpectedly disappeared into thin air in front of him. What made him even more shocked was that the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy was rushing towards the Resting Cemetery Island like a tide. He tried to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy, but to his horror, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't even absorb a trace of the heaven and earth spiritual energy into his body. How is this possible? Ji Qimei flashed and appeared at Daoist Su Yang's side. Her skinny hands grabbed Daoist Su Yang's shoulders as she stood in front of Tan Xiu the next moment. Venerable Lord, the array has been arranged. Ji Qimei released Daoist Su Yang and respectfully looked at Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu nodded and praised, that's right. It's much easier and faster than me arranging the array, too. Go. Follow them to the south of the island. There are a lot of fierce beasts there. Catch all of them and bring them to the island. Understood. Ji Qimei replied and quickly left with the 8 big men. Tan Xiu turned his head to look at the shocked Daoist Su Yang and lightly said, don't always make a fuss over nothing. Your cultivation is too low and you can't do many things. But don't worry and cultivate well. You'll be able to do these things when your cultivation improves in the future. Daoist Su Yang's mouth twitched as he bitterly said, Daoist Tang, this subordinate of yours, who exactly is she? She's too terrifying. I have a feeling that if she wants to, she can unleash her strongest attack and destroy most of the territory of our country. Sorry, I'm attending a friend's wedding today, so the update time was delayed. Chapter 549. Destroying most of China's territory. Tan Xiu sneered. You're really a frog in a well. She can blow up the entire earth if she wants to. You've been trapped here for too long and haven't seen the strength of those real powerhouses. Forget it. You won't understand it even if I tell you now. Just cultivate well later. If your aptitude is good, you may be able to take that step in the future if you get some opportunities. How is that possible? Daoist Su Yang exclaimed, an existence that can blow up the entire earth in one blow is at least an immortal who has ascended to heaven, right? The spiritual veins on earth have dried up and the spiritual energy here is thin. Let alone immortals, there are no nascent soul powerhouses here, no? Then, what level do you think her cultivation has reached? Asked Tan Xiu lightly. Daoist Su Yang hesitated for a moment and asked in a low voice, surpassing the nascent soul stage. Has she reached the spirit formation stage? Spirit formation stage. A bit of mockery was revealed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He learned from Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhu that the cultivation stages of Earth's cultivators were divided into Qi refining stage, foundation establishment stage, golden core stage, nascent soul stage, spirit formation stage, body integration stage, great ascension stage, and crossing tribulation stage. Each stage was divided into 4 stages: beginner, middle, advanced, and peak. Although the experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall had true Qi foundation, the strongest among them was only at the peak Qi refining stage. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhu were almost at the peak foundation establishment stage. As for Gu Xiaoxua, light and dark, they had broken through to the golden core stage. Even the deadline for Gu Xiaoxua to break through to the golden core stage was only a few days ago. However, Tan Xiu couldn't deny that Daoist Su Yang was a very powerful existence among the cultivators on Earth. He had reached the mid-stage golden core stage, and even light and dark could only be on par with him. Let's go. Since you're here, help me clean up the fierce beasts on this island. I'm going to rear fierce beasts here in the future. If I can't completely destroy their wild nature, it will be very troublesome to rear them. Daoist Su Yang was surprised. You want to rear fierce beasts on this island? That's right, said Tan Xiu. In my opinion, these fierce beasts are good materials for cultivation. If I can educate a few of them, I might be able to get a few good mounts in the future. Cough, cough. Even if Daoist Su Yang had a firm Dao heart, he still choked on Tan Xiu's words. How much ability did one have to be able to successfully educate a wild beast? Furthermore, he wanted to get a few as mounts. Suddenly, he realized that his vision over 100 years was really very, very small. Tan Xiu's actions, as well as the powerhouse named Ji Qimei, were things that he had never dared to imagine before. In fact, he had only been in contact with Tan Xiu for a short period of time, but he found that he seemed to have entered a whole new realm, a new world full of magnificence and mystery. Fellow Daoist Tang, your cultivation base, Daoist Su Yang couldn't help but ask. To be honest, I don't know exactly how strong I am now, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. This is also the reason why I want to compare notes with you. If I can defeat you, it means that my strength can be compared to a golden core stage expert. Daoist Su Yang stared blankly and asked in horror, you can see my cultivation base? Tan Xiu glanced at him and then rushed toward the distance. 2 mid-level fierce beasts were wandering around the island. The moment the geomancy was formed, they found that the island seemed to be different from before. Just as they were confused about the situation, they suddenly saw a figure rushing over. The two fierce beasts suddenly looked like they were facing a formidable enemy as their eyes firmly locked on Tan Xiu's body. Tan Xiu's speed was extremely fast. The moment he punched, two surging airflows erupted and bombarded the fierce beast's head. It could be said that he went all out in this punch, but it still only made the fierce beast retreat a few steps, raising its head and howling in pain. Roar! The other fierce beast stepped on a fireball and soared into the air the moment the fireball rose and pounced toward Tan Xiu. Its sharp claws extended more than 10 centimeters and were also covered in flames as it attempted to directly scratch Tan Xiu to death. Good material. Tan Xiu's eyes lit up and the sharp dagger instantly appeared in his hand. His figure flashed and the sharp dagger cut off the four claws of the fierce beast and then quickly put it into his interspatial ring. Roar! Roar! The two fierce beasts were in a disadvantageous position as soon as they came into contact with Tan Xiu, causing fear to appear in their eyes. Almost without hesitation, they turned around and dashed toward the distance. Wanna escape? A sneer appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. His speed was a bit faster than the two fierce beasts. He blocked their path and constantly bombarded the two fierce beasts with his fists that were as fast as a storm. After Taoist Su Yang arrived, he happened to see the scene of Tan Xiu beating the two fierce beasts. His mouth twitched a few times when he saw Tan Xiu's fierce momentum. It must be noted that cultivators had long since stopped using fists and kicks to attack. A few simple spells could generally solve all problems. Is he really a cultivator? The thought arose in Taoist Su Yang's mind, but he immediately shook his head with a wry smile. He then looked at Tan Xiu and called out, Taoist Tang, you can just use spells to trample them. We may have good physiques, but punching and kicking are too exhausting. Tan Xiu violently punched and kicked hundreds of times in one breath, beating the two fierce beasts to the brink of death. Only then did he stop and turn to look at Taoist Su Yang. After observing him for a while, he said, your cultivation is indeed good, so it's normal for you to use spells. But I can tell you that I'm not necessarily stronger than you if we were to compare notes. But if we are enemies, I'm 80% sure that I can kill you if we fight to the death. After saying that, he pondered for a moment and continued, I'll give you a gift after we go back. Taoist Su Yang didn't believe Tan Xiu's words, but he was still confused and asked, what gift? A membership card for the best gym in Jingmen Island, said Tan Xiu calmly. Gym? Membership card? Taoist Su Yang was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. You must be joking, Taoist Tang. I'm afraid no gym in the world is suitable for me given my strength, no? I told you that you're a frog in a well, but I didn't expect your knowledge to be so shallow, said Tan Xiu lightly. As a cultivator, do you think that as long as you have a high cultivation and a strong state of mind, you're already perfect? You're gravely mistaken. Cultivators are very strong, but there's another cultivation system in the world, and that's body cultivation. Everyone's body is their foundation. If their physique is not strong enough, they will know how miserable their fate will be when they cross the tribulation in the future. Once upon a time, Tan Xiu also believed that as long as a cultivator's cultivation was high enough and his state of mind was strong enough, he could be considered as a real powerhouse. Later, after experiencing countless tribulations, he finally understood the truth that one's own body was the foundation, and a tall building was built from the ground up. If one's foundation was not good, then no matter how high one's cultivation was in the future, they would end up very miserable if they encountered a real powerhouse. Body cultivation. Polishing one's own physique and eventually entering the Tao with the help of the cultivation of spiritual force, one would be able to unleash a terrifying might with bare fists. Even the toughness of a body cultivator's body was not inferior to that of an immortal artifact. Taoist Su Yang fell into silence. He didn't know whether he should believe Tan Xiu's words or not, because many of the contents of Tan Xiu's words were difficult for him to agree with. He even felt that Tan Xiu's words were somewhat exaggerated. Could it be that he knows about the situation of crossing the tribulation? Taoist Su Yang thought about it and then suppressed the idea at the bottom of his heart. He was perfectly aware that his current relationship with Tan Xiu could only be regarded as a casual acquaintance, far from enough to make Tan Xiu tell him some real secrets. However, he also made up his mind to be on good terms with Tan Xiu. Maybe it would be of great benefit to him in the future. After ravaging the two fierce beasts, Tan Xiu casually kicked them a few times. After seeing that they really couldn't get up again, he looked at Taoist Su Yang with satisfaction and said, "All right, don't blindly guess. There are a lot of fierce beasts on this island. I'm afraid there are at least hundreds of them. Help me ravage all the fierce beasts." "All right, then let's separate first." Taoist Su Yang nodded. For a whole day. There were a total of 146 fierce beasts on Resting Cemetery Island, and all of them were ravaged miserably. The blood-curdling screams and howls rang out incessantly. Additionally, Ji Qimei directly rushed to the southern sea area of Resting Cemetery Island and captured thousands of fierce beasts. She constantly beat and attacked them, ravaging them even more miserably. Those fierce beasts, who were originally full of wild nature, had been dealt with by her and became very docile, just like obedient little sheep. In the dead of the night, Ji Qimei, who stood next to Tang Xiu, looked at the dying fierce beasts in front of her and respectfully said, "Venerable Lord, I've probed the area with my spiritual sense. The number of fierce beasts in the radius of 200 kilometers is about 3,600. However, since my spiritual sense is damaged, I can't probe 200 meters deep into the sea. So I don't know how many fierce beasts there are below 200 meters deep in the sea. Also, I haven't found any terrifying fierce beasts you mentioned." Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and slowly said, "First, we'll capture more than 3,600 fierce beasts and bring them to Resting Cemetery Island. Then we'll go down there. If we don't remove the threat, I'm afraid there will be a crisis if we want to rear fierce beasts here in the future." Ji Qimei nodded without a word. In the next 4 days, Tan Xiu, and the experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall, as well as Ji Qimei and Taoist Su Yang, spent a lot of effort to capture more than 3,600 fierce beasts and bring them to Resting Cemetery Island. They also took turns to ravage them miserably. "Let's go to the sea." After doing all this, Tan Xiu directly rushed into the sea. Ji Qimei was very powerful. She directly released her immortal force to protect Tan Xiu as the two of them continued to sink to the depths of the sea. "Something's wrong, Venerable Lord." Ji Qimei was originally very casual. After all, she didn't believe that there was any existence on Earth that could threaten her safety with her strength. But after diving 200 to 300 meters into the sea, she keenly sensed something unusual. Chapter 550. Tan Xiu's eyesight was greatly limited at the bottom of the sea, and he could only see the scene tens of meters away. Ji Qimei's words made him keenly aware that the situation was not right. Silence. The deeper they went into the seabed, the quieter it became. Initially, they could still see a few fishes passing by, but the deeper they went, the fewer fishes there were. But now, they couldn't even see a single fish. There must be a reason for this abnormality, and it was definitely not normal. Ji Qimei, use your spiritual sense to explore. Tan Xiu looked around and said with a serious face. Ji Qimei forced a smile and shook her head. "I've probed with my spiritual sense, Venerable Lord. But I found a serious problem. My spiritual sense has been severely suppressed. There's even a special energy fluctuation that isolates my spiritual sense from the outside more than 20 kilometers away from here." Tan Xiu's complexion changed as he said, "If I'm not mistaken, the place you're talking about is the direction of Resting Cemetery Island?" "Yes, it's the direction of Resting Cemetery Island." Ji Qimei nodded. "Also, Resting Cemetery Island is very strange. There's no gray rock layer under it, but deep seawater." Tang Xiu stared blankly and incredulously said, "You mean Resting Cemetery Island is floating in the sea. Yes, it's completely suspended in the sea, answered Ji Qimei. Tang Xiu's heartbeat accelerated and countless thoughts kept churning inside his mind. He could now guess that there must be an extremely powerful person who had arranged a huge array under Resting Cemetery Island. Not only could this array support the island, but it could also isolate the spiritual sense of immortal cultivators. Let's go and have a look. Tan Xiu finally made a decision and said in a deep voice. With Ji Qimei here, he didn't believe that there was any place on earth that could bring danger to her. In just a few breaths, Ji Qimei led Tan Xiu to the bottom of Resting Cemetery Island. Reflected in their eyes was an energy screen that exuded golden light. On the energy screen, simple and unadorned Sanskrit characters that seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life were constantly moving on the light, as though they had spiritual wisdom. Ji Qimei, can you break this array? Tan Xiu studied it for a long time, but he still couldn't see through the mystery of this light curtain. He immediately turned to look at Ji Qimei and asked. Ji Qimei furrowed her brows and nodded. Then, she shook her head and helplessly said, I can break this array, Venerable Lord, but I found a serious problem. If I break this array by force, the entire array will be completely destroyed. If that was the case, Resting Cemetery Island would sink. Everything we've done has gone to waste. Tang Xiu's complexion changed. At the moment when he was at a loss of what to do, a special energy fluctuation suddenly made his fingers slightly numb. He was finally able to sense the fluctuation of a thirst emotion. What? Tang Xiu directly opened the interspatial ring. At this moment, the rusty ancient bronze lamp automatically flew out of the ring. Almost at the moment it came to the outside world, a dazzling golden light illuminated hundreds of kilometers of the seabed in a dazzling golden light. In the next moment, the ancient bronze lamp suddenly ignited by itself. A small wisp of flame jumped like a sprite, and a Buddhist sarira exuding a lofty Buddhist radiance quietly floated in front of Tan Xiu and Ji Qimei. What's this, Venerable Lord? Ji Qimei asked with a surprised expression. Tan Xiu shook his head in a daze. Although he had obtained the ancient bronze lamp, he had yet to study its mysteries. Usually, he only ignited the ancient bronze lamp when he was cultivating, which could make the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy richer and make his mind more tranquil. Buzz, buzz, a mysterious aura exuded from the Buddhist sarira. A golden brilliance that was 100 times more intense than the surrounding golden light directly shot into the energy layer. Suddenly, a 4-meter-tall and 2-meter-wide portal appeared in front of them. Get in. Tan Xiu and Ji Qimei exchanged glances. After hesitating for a moment, Tan Xiu gritted his teeth and said. Whoosh! Whoosh! After the two figures entered the portal, they were immediately stunned by the scene in front of them. There was no seawater here, but an endless space that stretched as far as the eye could see. In this vast space, there was a blue sky and white clouds, a black land, and undulating mountains without any vegetation. However, the countless tombstones and ancient tombs made one's scalp tingle. There are at least hundreds of thousands of tombs in sight. What is this place? Tan Xiu muttered to himself. Ji Qimei squinted her eyes and said, Venerable Lord, this is still the Earth's space. It's just that someone has opened a small world and attached it to the Earth's space barrier. These ancient tombs exude a very ancient aura, as though they are millions of years old. Also, look at the characters on those tombstones. All of them are written in Buddhist Sanskrit. In other words, all the people buried here are Buddhists. Buddhist burial? Tan Xiu suddenly recalled the inheritance he obtained in the walled hill village in Star City, which mentioned something about Buddhist burial. The content recorded there was very little. It only said that among the myriad worlds, there was once a Buddhist world, which was also the original land of Buddhism and the core of its development. Holy monk Amitabha had reached the level of a divine monk and was quite famous in the god realm. Unfortunately, holy monk Amitabha offended a mighty figure in the god realm and was eventually chased for millions of years. Ultimately, he couldn't escape the calamity, and even the Buddha world was swept away, with hundreds of millions of Buddhist disciples being obliterated. Later on, there were once Buddhist disciples from other worlds that found the shattered Buddha realm. In the end, they created a special world and carried out an unparalleled Buddha burial. Unfortunately, this matter was later learned by that mighty figure. After being chased for tens of thousands of years, that Buddhist disciple managed to escape and was never heard from again. It was as though he had evaporated from the myriad worlds. I never thought that that Buddhist disciple would come to earth and put the special world he created here. Buddha is compassionate, and the knowledge passed down by Buddhism is full of positive energy in the modern society. Tan Xiu suddenly felt a bit glad that he didn't order Ji Chi Mei to destroy the array. Otherwise, this world would have collapsed, and the ancient tombs of these Buddhist mighty figures would eventually dissipate into nothingness. Roar, a mournful roar came from the distant sky. Tan Xiu's complexion slightly changed. It was just a roar, but it almost broke his eardrums. Ji Chi Mei waved her sleeves to protect Tan Xiu and said, "Venerable Lord, there are some living beings here. Shall we go and have a look?" Tan Xiu slightly nodded and said, "Do remember to be careful." "All right." Ji Chi Mei replied and quickly brought Tan Xiu to the distance. Her speed was extremely fast. In just 2 minutes, she had crossed hundreds of millions of Buddhist tombs and appeared millions of kilometers away. When the outline of a towering mountain appeared in front of them, Ji Chi Mei's footsteps suddenly halted. "Venerable Lord," Tan Xiu looked around and saw a white and tall golden rock with 2 thick iron chains shackling its feet. Raging flames were burning on the golden rock's body. However, the golden rock was still standing there with its head held high. "Dolls, there are 2, human dolls. Succubus dolls. Interesting, interesting." The golden rock slowly lowered its head. After seeing Tan Xiu and Ji Chi Mei in the distance, it spoke in a jerky voice. "Do you know our origin?" Tan Xiu shouted in a deep voice. "What are you? What are you?" The golden rock lowered its head even more. After a long time, it spoke in a jerky voice, "I'm the golden rock of the God realm, not something. But you actually have his golden relic core. It's a pity that your strength is too weak, else I'd have a chance to leave this place and return to the God realm." Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and spoke again, "I know the golden rock. It's a very powerful mythological beast in the God realm. I didn't expect that I, Tan Xiu, would encounter a mythological beast. Tell me, how did you get chained here?" The golden rock shook its head and snorted. "I can't remember it. It's really strange. It's like someone erased part of my memory." "Who was it?" Tan Xiu stared blankly. He immediately frowned and asked, "Forget it since you can't remember it. But you should be very clear about the Buddha tomb here, right?" The golden rock blinked its huge eyes and suddenly said, "I just remembered something. I followed my master to chase and kill Buddha, but I was captured and chained here. Master, my master. My master actually doesn't exist anymore. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be." After saying that, large droplets of golden liquid flowed out of its eyes. Tan Xiu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that this golden rock mythological beast would actually cry. What the hell is this? After a long while, Tan Xiu was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh as he said, all right. Let's talk about the most serious matter. If I can rescue you in the future, what benefits can you give me?" The golden rock pondered for a moment before it stopped crying and said, "How about I help you condense your golden body? Although Buddha is very weak, I seem to understand it." Tan Xiu blinked. Golden body of Buddha? What kind of joke was this? The heavenly art of cosmic genesis he practiced was a supreme fiend god cultivation technique, and it was also a supreme fiend god body. If it was forged into a golden body of Buddha, how could he practice in the future? However, The golden rock seemed to have seen through Tan Xiu's thoughts and said with a strange smile, "Interesting, really interesting. Heavenly art of cosmic genesis. You practice the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. Didn't that holy monk Amitabha get this cultivation technique from my master and was eventually chased to death? Ha ha ha, interesting." Tan Xiu was taken aback and said in surprise, "You know a lot of things, huh? But why does holy monk Amitabha need the heavenly art of cosmic genesis?" The golden rock looked at Tan Xiu as if it was looking at an idiot and said, "Don't you know that the two extremes of Buddha and demon are the cultivation of the wheel? If they are compatible, they will be formed, and if they are separated, they will disperse. Only when Buddha and demon are compatible can holy monk Amitabha take the last step and reach the level of hierarch. Hierarch. My master's realm is the peak existence of the divine world." Chapter 551. Tan Xiu was completely dumbfounded. He was once a supreme in the immortal world, but how could he know the secrets of the god's realm? Even though he had obtained the heavenly art of cosmic genesis back in the immortal world, he couldn't cultivate it no matter how hard he studied it. Not to mention everything this golden rock just said. We'll take our leave if there's nothing else." Tan Xiu let out an embarrassed smile and immediately prepared to leave. Since there was no danger beneath Resting Cemetery Island, his purpose of coming here could be considered to have been achieved. As long as he searched the nearby sea area and captured all the fierce beasts and brought them to Resting Cemetery Island to be tamed and raised, it could be considered as a success. The golden rock was startled and quickly said, "Please don't. You may be nothing but an ant in my eyes now, but don't you want to obtain a Buddhist golden body?" Although Tan Xiu was tempted, his expression remained unchanged. He shook his head indifferently and said, "What use do I have for a Buddhist golden body with my current cultivation? Even if I need it later, I'll just find a Buddhist cultivation technique. The heavenly art of cosmic genesis is difficult to obtain, but a Buddhist cultivation technique is as easy as flipping my hand." "You're really short-sighted, brat." The golden rock angrily shouted. "I'll help you condense a golden body, so how can you be compared to an ordinary Buddhist disciple? Believe me, your physical strength will increase by tens of thousands of times after obtaining a Buddhist golden body. Even an ordinary immortal weapon won't be able to hurt you." Tan Xiu's spirit shook and he said, "There's an old saying here that pies falling from the sky can generally crush people to death. So tell me your conditions." The golden rock let out a long cry and said, "You have great wisdom. My conditions are very simple. When you become a supreme in the immortal world, that is, the peak of the immortal world, come back here and release me." "Is this your condition?" Tan Xiu curiously asked. "Only this one?" "Yes," said the golden rock. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, "I promise you." Upon hearing this, the golden rock instantly spread its wings and two golden lights shot out from its wings and directly hit Tan Xiu. Even though Ji Qi Mei was very powerful, she still couldn't stop it in time. Ah! A monstrous heatwave instantly enveloped Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu had a feeling that this unbearable burning sensation was more painful than being cut into pieces or being executed by 1,000 cuts. However, just as he was about to be unable to hold on any longer, a series of ancient golden characters that were filled with the vicissitudes of life continuously appeared within his body. These ancient talismans seemed to be filled with intelligence. As they swam through his body, they fused into the meridians all over his body. One blocked meridian after another was penetrated by the ancient talismans. The ancient talismans occupied the acupoints one after another. The golden light merged with the astral power inside Tan Xiu's body, causing a qualitative change in his astral power. The two extremes of Buddhism and demonic merged to form perfection. When it was full, it would return to one and become primal chaos. In just a few breaths, the astral power in Tan Xiu's body had completely disappeared and was replaced by the newly formed chaotic power. This chaotic power was thousands of times stronger than the astral power, immortal power, and countless times stronger than the divine power. Only when one reached the hierarch realm could he slowly transform the divine power into chaotic power, opening up a new world and forming a new reincarnation. Finally, he could take the last step and become a supreme existence. And Tan Xiu, whose cultivation was not even at the nascent soul stage of ordinary cultivators, actually possessed this kind of chaotic power. If the mighty figures in the immortal world and the divine world knew about it, they would probably go crazy with jealousy. At this moment, Tang Xiu's muscles, bones, meridians, and even his 5 viscera and 6 bowels underwent a qualitative change. His eyes emitted a gray light, and his skin seemed to have darkened a lot as if it had a bronze color. The hair all over his body had long been burned off, but it grew again at this time. Time flew by. After a full 9 days, Tan Xiu's body was completely transformed. After the 2 golden lights disappeared into the golden rock's wings, the golden rock directly lay down and fell into a deep sleep. Tan Xiu's height had increased by several centimeters. His smooth muscles were incomparably beautiful, and his body's proportions had become very perfect. "How do you feel, Lord?" Ji Qimei had been in a tense mood for the past few days as she watched the changes in Tan Xiu's body. At this moment, she saw Tan Xiu open his eyes and hurriedly asked with concern. A smile was outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth as a thick smile crawled on his face. "Very good, very good. My current body may not be comparable to an immortal weapon, but it's not too far from it. I really didn't expect that there would be a day when my physique would actually be stronger than those body cultivators." Buddhist golden body. It was not a real body cast from gold, but a human body that had undergone a qualitative change. Even the bones had become comparable to metal and stone. Even Buddhist disciples who wanted to have a Buddhist golden body were powerhouses with profound attainments in Buddhist Dharma. Ji Qimei looked at the golden rock and asked in a low voice, "What happened to it?" Tan Xiu turned to look at the golden rock with a bit of gratitude in his eyes. It didn't matter what happened to it in the past or what enmity its master had with Buddhism. At the very least, it had helped him achieve a Buddhist golden body, making his physique strength soar thousands of times. "Rest assured. I'll come back and release you from this place after I return to my peak." Tan Xiu cupped his fists and said with a clear voice. After saying that, he didn't stay any longer and let Ji Qimei take him back the way they came. After he left the portal, he saw the ancient bronze lamp still suspended in the air, and the flickering flame was much dimmer than before. "Is there a problem, Lord?" "I sensed a powerful aura from above." Ji Qimei saw that Tan Xiu had stored the ancient bronze lamp into his interspatial ring. As the portal on the light curtain disappeared, her complexion suddenly changed and a glint burst out from her eyes. With a slightly changed expression, Tan Xiu said in a deep voice, "Go up immediately." Ji Qimei's speed was extremely fast. In just a few breaths, she had already brought Tan Xiu out of the sea surface and was only 7 to 8 kilometers away from Resting Cemetery Island. The moment the two of them rushed out of the sea surface, their eyes simultaneously fell on the huge octopus. How strange. This shouldn't be called a fierce beast, right? But, a demon? Tan Xiu was surprised. "This is indeed a demonic beast, Lord," said Ji Qimei respectfully. "It has comprehended its own cultivation method and created a brand new cultivation system. There's also a demon core inside its body. It's very different from the beast core inside a high-level fierce beast." Tan Xiu stroked his chin and asked, "What do you think about this demonic beast's strength?" "Judging from its desperate attack on the Resting Cemetery Island's array, I'm afraid it's much stronger than me." "It's indeed very powerful," said Ji Qimei respectfully. According to the cultivation level of cultivators, its strength is more than that of a nascent soul stage cultivator and can be compared to a spirit formation stage cultivator. It's really inconceivable for someone with such strength to appear on Earth today. I once sensed a terrifying aura in a certain sea area in the South China Sea. Tan Xiu shook his head. This shows that there are indeed many dangerous fierce beasts in the tens of thousands of islands in the vast sea. Maybe there are also demonic beasts like this one. Well, it's up to you to get rid of it. It just so happens that my physical strength has greatly increased, so I need to cultivate a higher level cultivation technique. I've cultivated both Buddhism and Demon Tao, and I already have a Buddhist golden body. I just need to cast my demon body. Ji Qimei didn't know much about Tan Xiu's cultivation. She didn't even know that Tan Xiu cultivated the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. Of course, even if she knew it now, she didn't know how powerful and special this cultivation technique was. After receiving Tan Xiu's order, she gently stroked her finger and a lightning bolt appeared out of thin air, instantly forming a terrifying electric net that wrapped the octopus demonic beast inside. Then, Ji Qimei's wrist gently shook and the electric net wrapped around the octopus demonic beast was pulled over, directly appearing in front of the two of them. Should we kill it directly, Lord? Asked Ji Qimei. Tan Xiu nodded and said, kill it directly and decompose its body for me. Also, break down its body for me. Remember, you must keep its demon core and all its blood. Understood. Ji Qimei respectfully nodded. The electric net shrank, and the octopus demonic beast was dismembered amidst shrill screams. Pieces of its flesh were wrapped by the air currents. Not a single drop of blood or hair of the octopus demonic beast, which weighed more than 10,000 kilograms, was lost. Tan Xiu waved his arm and collected the octopus demonic beast's flesh and blood into his interspatial ring. It took him a few minutes to collect all the flesh and bones. Ji Qimei, catch all the fierce beasts in the sea area within a 500-kilometer radius and throw them on Resting Cemetery Island. We'll immediately return to Jingmen Island after this task is completed. Tan Xiu ordered and then flew toward Resting Cemetery Island. Just now, dozens of Everlasting Feast Hall's experts on Resting Cemetery Island were standing on the shore, watching the octopus demonic beast baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it constantly whipped the array with its tentacles. However, Ji Qimei easily trapped the octopus demonic beast. That terrifying electric net simply made their hearts tremble. Although they knew that Ji Qimei was very powerful, they didn't expect that she would be this powerful. However, the ones who were most shocked were not the dozens of experts from the Everlasting Feast Hall, but Taoist Su Yang, who was standing on the shore of Resting Cemetery Island. The moment the octopus demonic beast appeared, his heart was already in his throat and he was ready to fight to the death. However, the array arranged by Ji Qimei made him exclaim in surprise. He could feel that the octopus demonic beast was at least 100 times more powerful than him. However, the octopus demonic beast had been attacking it for a long time, yet it still couldn't break the array. Ji Qimei's action ignited the shock in his heart. Is she still human? Even a spirit formation stage expert might not be able to do this, right? Is she a body integration stage expert? Or Great Ascension stage? Thinking up to there, Taoist Su Yang's old face turned particularly splendid. Chapter 552. At the Tang family's ancestral residence in the imperial capital. Tang Guosheng's face was gloomy as he looked at the gray-robed and sturdy old man sitting in front of him. Tang Guosheng had been in the army all his life and had encountered countless storms and waves, but there were only a handful of people who could make him afraid. And the one in front of him was one of them. Dong Bei Hu, I need a reason. Tang Guosheng was silent for a long time before he spat out the words with difficulty. Had it been someone else who dared to ask me for a reason, he would have turned into a corpse by now, said Dong Bei Hu with a calm expression. Even his family would have been wiped out. But you, Tang Guosheng, have a bit of a relationship with me, and I also admire what you did in the past. So I'll give you a reason. I owed a favor to the Yao family back then, and Yao Qingzuan has kept it until now. The reason why I came to your Tang family is to repay that favor. Tang Guosheng clenched his fists and anger burst out from his eyes. After a long silence, he slowly said, 7 days. Give me 7 days to make a decision. Leave and you'll live, stay and die. Dong Bei Hu nodded. I've said what I should say, so it's up to you to decide. You're just an ordinary person with half a foot in the coffin. It's worth it whether you live or die. But, think about your family's descendants. Nothing is more precious than living. After that, he slowly stood up and took a step forward. In an instant, he had already disappeared from the room. Tang Guosheng's tense body went limp the moment Dong Bei Hu disappeared. His back was already covered in sweat, and his entire body was filled with exhaustion. If it wasn't for Tan Xiu's treatment that made his body very healthy, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for a long time after today's meeting. Bam, 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 rapid footsteps came from the door as Tang Guoshou, Tang Yunpeng, and Tang Min rushed in from the outside. When they saw the pale and sweaty Tang Guosheng, Tang Yunpeng hurriedly asked, Dad, what did that Dong Bei Hu say? Did he change his mind? Tang Guosheng shook his head with difficulty and bitterly said, he didn't change his mind. I asked him for 7 days. I'll give him an answer after 7 days. Tang Guoshou slammed the wall and angrily shouted, cultivators dare to meddle in the affairs of ordinary people like us, and they even dare to make things difficult for big clans like us. Had the Yao family gone mad? If the matter of him using the Amur tiger is spread out, I'm afraid that all the families in the country will be furious and even be on guard against his Yao family. Who knows, they might even secretly unite and find an opportunity to eliminate his Yao family. Tang Guosheng said helplessly, do they dare? Tang Guoshou's breathing stagnated, and a pained expression appeared in his eyes. Yes. Would they dare? The Manchurian tiger's identity was clear to the top figures and the top clans in China. Who would dare to provoke the Manchurian tiger after so many years? Even if it was the most powerful person, didn't they all go to the northeast to visit the Manchurian tiger after they came to power? Dad, I still can't contact Xiu. At this time, Tang Yunda rushed in from the door with an anxious expression on his face. Tang Guosheng waved his hand and said, since we can't contact him, then there's no need to contact him. Although Xiu was outstanding and powerful, he was still too young. Forget it. Inform everyone to hold a family meeting in 2 days and recall all the core members of the Tang family. The Manchurian tiger wants us to leave China and go abroad to fend for ourselves. Ask everyone if they agree or not. The other 4 members of the Tang family looked at each other in dismay. Their faces immediately turned ashen and they fell into silence. Jingmen Island. Tang Yunqing appeared in the everlasting feast hall, dressed in casual clothes and accompanied by only 2 guards. After casually asking for a box, Tang Yunqing spoke to the attendant who came with him, I want to see the everlasting feast hall's boss. I'll have to trouble you to notify him. I'm sorry, but I don't have the qualifications to contact our boss directly, said the beautiful attendant apologetically. I can tell our manager if there's anything you need. Tang Yunqing nodded and said, then tell him that the Tang family from the imperial capital has come. Please wait a moment. I'll leave first. The beautiful attendant nodded and said. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man quickly came from behind Gu Xiaoxue, who was sitting cross-legged on the coast. When he came behind Gu Xiaoxue, he immediately respectfully said, Little boss, someone wants to see you. Gu Xiaoxue floated and asked, Who is it? The Tang family from the imperial capital. The middle-aged man respectfully replied. Gu Xiaoxue's brows raised. She immediately nodded and said, I see. Lead the way. Quickly. When Gu Xiaoxue appeared in the box, Tang Yunqing immediately stood up and said, Long time no see, Miss Gu. Gu Xiaoxue lightly smiled and said, If I remember correctly, you should be Uncle Yunqing, right? Are you looking for our boss this time? Or? I want to see Tan Xiu, said Tang Yunqing immediately. But I've called him many times, but I can't get in touch with him. I learned that he's in Jingmen Island, so I immediately rushed over. Miss Gu, can I trouble you to tell him that I'm looking for him for an urgent matter? Gu Xiaoxue stared blankly and asked with astonishment, an urgent matter? Did something big happen to the Tang family? Our boss went to the sea and I can't get in touch with him for the time being. Tang Yunqing forced a smile and said, something big indeed happened. If it's not handled well, I'm afraid our Tang family will be finished. Miss Gu, you're someone that my nephew trusts very much, so I won't hide it from you. You should have heard of this Amur tiger, right? I've heard of him. He's very strong. Gu Xiaoxue nodded. That's right. He's very strong. Tang Yunqing nodded and said, there seems to be no one more powerful than him in the entire country. I don't know what method the Yao family used to invite the Amur tiger from his hometown. He gave us a choice to leave the imperial capital and China. Leave the imperial capital, leave the kingdom of Huaxia. Otherwise, he will attack our Tang clan and exterminate our entire clan. Gu Xiaoxue's complexion changed. A cold light flashed in her eyes as she coldly said, Amur tiger. He's very courageous. If it wasn't for my master who helped him break through his cultivation in the past, he wouldn't have the glory he has today. I didn't expect that he would dare to set his eyes on boss's family in just a few decades. Uncle Yunqing, you can rest assured. Although the Amur tiger is very strong, he can't shake the Tang family. Tang Yunqing looked blank for a moment before he forced a smile and said, Miss Gu, it's not that I don't believe you, but that Amur tiger is not an ordinary person. He's a cultivator. Do you know what it means to be a cultivator? He's an existence akin to an immortal. In case. There's no in case. Gu Xiaoxue waved her hand and said, I'll immediately send someone to follow you back to the imperial capital. If the Amur tiger dares to attack the Tang family's ancestral residence directly, at least the people I'll send to help you resist for a while. Also, I'll immediately send someone to Clam Island to find my boss. As long as they know my boss, let alone a small Amur tiger, even if there are 100 Amur tigers, only death awaits them. Tang Yunqing was stunned. He didn't expect that Gu Xiaoxue could speak such arrogant words. After hesitating for a while, he curiously asked, Miss Gu, do you know about cultivators? Gu Xiaoxue pondered for a moment. She then waved her hand and all the objects in the room that were not fixed floated up. Along with the movement of her wrist, everything began to rotate in a certain pattern. Heavens! This is... Tang Yunqing was shocked, his eyes were wide open, as if he was dreaming. Such means and such a scene were beyond his understanding. I don't know if boss has told you that we're all cultivators, but I'm sure that our everlasting feast hall has someone who can get rid of the Amur tiger. Moreover, there's more than one of them. However, Xiaoxue needs to ask Uncle Yunqing a favor. When Tang Yunqing saw that everything was put back in place, he immediately asked excitedly, what's the matter? Tell me, as long as I can do it, I'll do it without any hesitation. Gu Xiaoxue said, Uncle Yunqing, I hope you can keep what I just said to you in your heart. I don't want anyone to know about it from your mouth. After all, our identities are very special, and I told you directly without boss's permission. Even my uncle can't do it? Tang Yunqing quickly asked. He's the Tang family's patriarch, and I'm afraid he's under the biggest pressure now. Gu Xiaoxue shook her head and said, Elder Tang's identity is extraordinary. Even if there's pressure, it won't be able to push him down. Furthermore, I think that now is the best time for the Tang family to unite as one. Tang Yunqing was silent for a moment before he nodded and said, I understand. Rest assured, Miss Gu. Since you said so, I'll never tell anyone. Half an hour later. Tang Yunqing left with 2 guards and 30 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall. At the same time, Gu Xiaoxue immediately issued an order to send someone to Clam Island to find Tan Xiu. At Jingmen Island's port. Just as Tan Xiu stepped off the liner, he saw several familiar experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall walking toward another liner. His expression changed slightly, and he sent someone to call those people over. Boss, we're about to go to Clam Island to find you. The big man who was called respectfully reported. Looking for me? Tan Xiu was puzzled. Why? Little boss is looking for you. She said that there's an urgent matter. I got it. Tan Xiu's expression changed. After rushing to the everlasting feast hall, he saw Gu Xiaoxue standing at the edge of the parking lot. Apparently, she had received the news of his return in advance. Xiaoxue, you said there's an urgent matter? Gu Xiaoxue gestured to the others. As everyone dispersed, she then said, Boss, I saw Tang Yunqing 2 hours ago. Tan Xiu's expression moved and asked, Is the matter you're about to tell me related to the Tang family? That's right. Uncle Yunqing told me that the Amur tiger from the northeast has arrived at the imperial capital and is going to attack the Tang family. Gu Xiaoxue nodded. Today's third update has ended. Seeking monthly and recommendation votes for support. Chapter 553. Tan Xiu's strength had skyrocketed, and he was now full of confidence. If it was said that he wanted to challenge Taoist Su Yang before and verify the exact extent of his strength, then he didn't have such thoughts now because Taoist Su Yang was already unable to harm him in the slightest by merely relying on the strength of his physique. Amur tiger. Tan Xiu had heard of this name from Taoist Su Yang and also had a simple understanding of it. But he never expected that Amur tiger would unexpectedly attack the Tang family. Why? Despite having a well-thought-out plan in mind, Tan Xiu still asked for the reason. I don't know much, Grand Master. Would you like to contact the Tang family's elders? Gu Xiaoxue said softly. Tan Xiu suddenly sobered up. He grabbed his mobile and looked at it, only to find that it had already been shut down due to running out of power. He found the charger and charged it for a few minutes before turning it back on. Then, he kept receiving text messages and missed calls. Most of them were from the Tang family's people. Imperial capital, Tang family's ancestral residence. Tang Guosheng was smoking a cigarette with a worried expression on his wrinkled face. He was unwilling to accept the downfall of the Tang family in Huaxia. He was even more unwilling to see the Tang family being expelled from Huaxia and struggling at death's door abroad. However, the Manchurian tiger's fame and his supernatural methods were like a mountain pressing down on his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. Yao family, had I known that you had such a trump card, I would have used the future of the entire Tang family as a gambling stake. I would have shed all pretense of cordiality with you. Even if my Tang family falls, I would have dragged your Yao family to the grave with me. Tang Guosheng thought painfully. Ring, 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 his cell phone rang, but he didn't have the strength to answer it. Only after the ringtone rang for 5 or 6 times did he slowly pick up the phone. When his eyes fell on the name on the screen, his expression slightly froze and his eyes instantly burst with light. After Tang Guosheng picked up the call, he slowly spat out a sentence, You know about it, Xiu? I already know about it, Grandpa. But I don't know much about it. Tell me, what's the situation? Why would that old man from the northeast suddenly want to deal with our Tang family? Tan Xiu's calm voice came through the phone. Tang Guosheng bitterly said, What else can it be? Our Tang family has no enmity with him in the past or in the near future, and it is all because of the Yao family. Forget it, Xiu, take care of yourself. Don't worry about the family matters. If the Tang family really can't hold on in the end, you should also be prepared to go abroad. Tan Xiu smiled faintly and said, Grandpa, words that boost others' morale and diminish our own prestige don't seem to come from your mouth. In the eyes of others, he may be a Siberian tiger, but in my eyes, he is just a little green insect. There are some things that I haven't told you in depth. Now that things have come to this, I feel that I don't need to hold back anymore. Weren't they just cultivators? If I wanted to kill him, I could do it easily. Tang Guosheng's expression changed and he said in a deep voice, Don't talk nonsense, Xiu. Cultivators are extremely terrifying existences in our country. Although their number is as scarce as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, each and every one of them possesses the power of ghosts and gods. Ordinary people can't deal with them. I know that you know some cultivation techniques, but... Tan Xiu interrupted Tang Guosheng and seriously said, "There's something you might not know, Grandpa. I'm also a cultivator, and my strength may not be worse than the Amur tiger. Furthermore, nearly all the core members of the Everlasting Feast Hall are cultivators. If some experts were to act, let alone one Amur tiger, even if there were 10 Amur tigers, I wouldn't put them in my eyes. You can tell me about this matter first. I will set off for the imperial capital in a moment." "Leave this matter to me." Tang Guosheng involuntarily exclaimed, "What did you just say, Xiu? You're a cultivator? All the core members of the Everlasting Feast Hall are cultivators? How is this possible? How can there be so many cultivators in the world?" Tan Xiu calmly said, "Grandpa, you should know my character. If I don't have a diamond, I won't do porcelain work. Since I dare to do it, it means that I have enough confidence. In addition, this matter concerns the safety of the entire Tang family, so I won't lie through my teeth, nor will I brag." Tang Guosheng didn't speak for a long time, but the excitement on his old face was very intense. After explaining the relationship between the Yao family and the Amur tiger, Tan Xiu directly hung up the phone. At the Everlasting Feast Hall on Jingmen Island. Tan Xiu had just taken a shower and changed into clean clothes when Daoist Su Yang hurried over. Although Tan Xiu had arranged a residence for him, he still kept thinking about going to the northeast, so he came to find Tan Xiu to discuss when to leave. "Daoist Tang, I want to know who's stronger, me or the Amur tiger. When can we set off?" "Immediately." Tan Xiu gave a clear answer. Daoist Su Yang's eyes lit up and he smilingly said, "Daoist Tang is really a man of his word. Then let's go now." "What I said immediately is, I'll leave for the imperial capital by myself, and you'll go back to where you came from." Tan Xiu shook his head. "There's a special reason, I hope you can understand." Daoist Su Yang's complexion changed and he asked, "What special reason?" "I'm also curious about this Amur tiger." Tan Xiu lightly said, "He can become a terrifying figure in the eyes of the top influential figures in China, so it's not a big deal to meet him. However, he ran to the imperial capital and tried to deal with my Tang family, so he's dead meat. Do you want to exchange pointers with someone who's about to die?" Daoist Su Yang shuddered inwardly. He recalled Ji Qimei's terrifying strength, as well as Tan Xiu's unfathomable cultivation. He hesitated for a moment before he forced a smile and said, "Daoist Tang, are you mistaken? Amur tiger may be powerful, but he never takes the initiative to provoke others. How could he possibly deal with your Tang family?" "My Tang family is one of the top families in China," explained Tan Xiu. "We're in the political maelstrom and naturally have political enemies. This political enemy is the Yao family in the imperial capital. The old patriarch of the Yao family once saved Amur tiger's life. I don't think I need to say the rest, right?" Daoist Su Yang was silent for a while before he helplessly shook his head and said, "If that's the case, then let me go to the imperial capital with you. He and I have been rivals for nearly 100 years. Since he's leaving, I hope I can be there to send him off personally." "If that's the case, then it's fine." Tan Xiu nodded. The imperial capital. In a high-end specialty store on the 4th floor of Baiyun Mall, Tang Tang was being dragged by her friends to stroll around. The atmosphere in her family was not right these days. Although she wanted to inquire about what happened, nobody was willing to tell her. The result was depressing to her. But the thing that annoyed her the most was not this matter. It was the morning when she was inexplicably bumped into, and the other party even cursed her a lot of vulgar words. Although she was not injured, she argued with the other party for a long time and suffered a lot of vexation. "Yan Yan, is it about time?" Tang Tang touched her right arm and asked in a low voice. "What's wrong with you today, Tang Tang?" Guan Yanyan laughed. I know you're in a bad mood these days, so I dragged you out to relax, but you're still listless. Did something happen? Just tell me if there's something. I'll help you. Tang Tang shook her head and was about to speak. Suddenly, she saw a girl with a pet dog in her arms, dressed in famous brands, coming from a distance, followed by two young men. She knew the two young men. They were from the Yao family's branch family, very famous hedonistic young masters in the imperial capital. How come they are together? Tang Tang slightly furrowed her brows. To avoid trouble, she pulled Guan Yanyan and whispered, I'm fine. Let's go quickly. Whoops, isn't this the bitch who bumped into me today? I was alone this morning and you bullied me. How about now? I'm taking my two cousins shopping. Why don't you try and bully me again? The girl quickened her pace and came before Tang Tang and Guan Yanyan. Immediately, Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao, who stood behind her, looked angry. Yao Xinlei strode to the girl's side and glared at Tang Tang, shouting, So you're the one who bullied my cousin this morning? Tang Tang, I've long wanted to beat you up, but I didn't expect you to take the initiative to provoke us. Humph, come with me. I'll let you know today that your Tang family is not qualified to lick our Yao family's ass. Having said that, he grabbed Tang Tang's arm. Tang Tang angrily swung her arm, but she couldn't break free from the big hand. She immediately shouted angrily, Yao Xinlei, I know you're not a good thing, but what's the use of bullying girls? Let go of me, else I'll call my big brother. Yao Xinlei's heart jumped. He knew who the big brother Tang Tang was talking about was. He and Tang Wei were both living in the imperial capital, and he was perfectly aware of Tang Wei's cruel and merciless character. He would have been afraid if it was any other time. But this time was different. He was following his cousin Yao Xinhua's plan, so he naturally wasn't afraid of Tang Wei. Tang Tang, this matter isn't over yet. Call your big brother if you have the ability. I'll change my surname to Tang if I don't beat him up. Tang Tang struggled to break free from Yao Xinlei's hand. She took out her mobile and quickly called Tang Wei, explaining the whole situation in a clear and organized manner. Wait for me. This was Tang Wei's reply. Half an hour later, Tang Wei arrived with 4 of his recently recruited men. He didn't think much and immediately gave the order to beat up Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao. However, just as the 4 youths were about to make their move, 20 to 30 youths dressed like hooligans suddenly appeared nearby with clubs in their hands. Without any words, those youths attacked the 4 youths brought by Tang Wei. Bastards! If Tang Wei still didn't know that the present situation was arranged by Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao in advance, then he would be out of his mind. Yao Xinlei proudly shouted, Take them away from me. Send them to the small dark room and hand them over to Brother Xinhua to deal with. It's a new week, please vote for me. Chapter 554. Baiyun Mall was a high-end place in the imperial capital, and its security force was quite good. However, Yao Xinlei had long bribed the mall's security guards by relying on his identity and promised some benefits. Therefore, the group of people escorting Tang Wei and Tang Tang didn't encounter any obstruction as they left. However, this dispute was seen by a certain family's junior in the imperial capital. He knew Yao Xinlei and the others, as well as Tang Wei's group. After all, they were the silk pants of the imperial capital, and it was impossible for them not to attract attention. Therefore, the news that Tang Wei and Tang Tang were escorted away by Yao Xinlei's group quickly reached Tang Guosheng's ears. Find them and rescue them. Tang Guosheng issued the order with a gloomy face and mobilized all the Tang family's intelligence network in the imperial capital, using all their connections. On the other side, the Yao family didn't seem to deliberately hide their whereabouts, so Tang Guosheng learned the address where Tang Wei and Tang Tang were escorted to in just over an hour. At the same time, Tan Xiu and Daoist Su Yang appeared at the imperial capital airport. The siblings, Light and Dark, who had just returned to Jingmen Island's everlasting feast hall, also followed them to the imperial capital. Tan Xiu hung up the phone and a ruthless look flashed in his eyes. He faintly regretted that he didn't directly get rid of Yao Xinhua when he was in Jingmen Island. Little dark house. Tan Xiu sneered inwardly. According to the address he just got from Tang Guosheng, he directly stopped a taxi and the four of them rushed to the destination. Imperial Capital's Bridgehead District, Jia Baol Amusement Park. Yao Xinhua sat in the empty innermost part of the amusement park's haunted house with a lit cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. The entire haunted house was dimly lit, with smoke lingering in the air and a gloomy atmosphere that sent chills down one's spine. The two brothers, Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao, stood on both sides of Yao Xinhua. They crossed their arms and looked at Tang Wei and Tang Tang, as well as Guan Yanyan, who was caught because of Yang Qi. What's wrong? Young Master Tang, are you afraid? Yao Xinhua flicked the cigarette ash and sat cross-legged on the chair, teasing. Tang Wei's expression was very calm. He looked at Yao Xinhua's complacent expression and lightly said, "There's something I forgot to tell you. Your grandpa is afraid of everything, but I'm not afraid of your Yao family's cowards." Yao Xinhua, I originally thought you were the most outstanding descendant of the Yao family, but I didn't expect you to play this kind of petty tricks. It seems like I overestimated you. Tang Wei, what's the point of flaunting your tongue? Yao Xinhua mocked. Actually, I've wanted to deal with you for a long time, but unfortunately, I've been delayed by all sorts of things and ended up dragging it until now. Your Tang family is already on the decline, and I'm afraid it won't be long before you'll be chased out of China. In the future, you won't be a majestic Tang family disciple in my eyes, but a battered and exhausted stray dog. Tang Wei looked angry and sneered, Yao Xinhua, I know you've been delayed by various things in the past and have been bullied by my younger brother, Tan Xiu. But you're still willing to mention such a shameful thing? I feel ashamed for you. Do you really think you can guess what will happen to the Tang family in the future? Tan Xiu. Yao Xinhua clenched his fists tightly with a resentful look in his eyes. What he hated the most now was this name and its owner. If he could, he wished he could hack Tan Xiu into pieces and pull out his tendons and skin him alive. Glaring coldly at Tang Wei, Yao Xinhua coldly said, Tang Wei, your tone is very tough, but I don't know if your bones are tough or not. But you can rest assured. These two younger brothers of mine have been drooling over your younger sister for a long time and will absolutely not test whether her bones are tough or not. Hee hee. Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao deliberately revealed a smiling expression as they looked at Tang Tang while stroking their chins. Tang Tang didn't have a trace of fear. She even puffed out her small chest and said, Yao Xinhua, don't you know that these two dogs of yours are useless? Also, if these two dogs dare to touch a finger of mine, it's tantamount to shedding all pretense of cordiality with my Tang family. Your Yao family is very strong, but how can you know what cards my Tang family has in hand? At that time, Tang Wei stared blankly for a moment. Looking at his younger sister's unexpectedly tough attitude, he instantly understood what she meant. She was bluffing to deter Tang Xinhua. In an instant, he reacted and pretended to be angry as he shouted, Shut up, Tang Tang. Tang Tang's eyes lit up. She understood that her brother had understood her intention, so she deliberately revealed a resentful expression and turned her face to the side. Yao Xinhua's heart thumped. As a descendant of a major family in the imperial capital, he naturally knew that every major family had their own trump card. A few days ago, his grandfather personally said that the Tang family was not as weak as they looked on the surface and must have some trump cards. Therefore, in order to deal with the Tang family, his grandfather personally invited the Amur tiger to the imperial capital. Could it be, what trump card does the Tang family really have that they're not even afraid of the Amur tiger? Yao Xinhua didn't know much about the situation of cultivators, but Tang Tang's words and Tang Wei's performance made him secretly vigilant. He decided to change some of his previous thoughts. However, he didn't really intend to let his two cousins humiliate Tang Tang. His words just now were just a threat. He didn't even intend to let his men beat Tang Wei. His purpose was very simple, to humiliate Tang Wei and the Tang family. As long as Tang Wei yielded, it would be the same as slapping the Tang family's face. Men, castrate Tang Wei for me. I really want to know what interesting things will happen in the future after the dignified young master of the Tang family becomes the last living eunuch on earth. Yao Xinhua clapped his hands and shouted. Immediately, 4 big men, who had long prepared some tools, strode to the front of Tang Wei. 2 of them grabbed the tied-up Tang Wei and forcefully pressed him on a bench. The last living eunuch on earth? Interesting indeed. A strange voice came from a distance. Just as the voice faded away, a hazy figure appeared at Tang Wei's side. Along with the 4 blasts of air, the 4 big men, who were about to deal with Tang Wei, instantly stiffened on the spot. Yao Xinhua abruptly stood up from the chair with a horrified look in his eyes. What shocked him was not the arrival of Tan Xiu, but the fact that Tan Xiu was standing at Tang Wei's side in a flash. Such a terrifying speed was absolutely something he had never seen before in his life. Where did this dog come from? Yao Xinlei's brows pricked up as he stepped forward and shouted. Puff! A crescent-shaped machete rotated at an extremely fast speed and directly cut into Yao Xinlei's neck. In less than 1/100th of a second, Yao Xinlei felt that the world was spinning, and his line of sight kept moving. He saw the ceiling and a headless corpse with blood spurting out of its neck. Clad in white, the handsome and unrestrained light silently appeared at Tan Xiu's side. The crescent-shaped machete evaporated along with the blood on it and returned to his hand. Bam, 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 the sound of bodies falling to the ground kept ringing on both sides. More than 20 of Yao Xinhua's men desperately clutched their throats as they fell to the ground and twitched, gradually losing their movements. Yao Xinhua's complexion changed. He recalled the night when he participated in the charity gala in Jingmen Island, where he fell unconscious without knowing it. He was astute and had already guessed that the person he knocked unconscious was Tan Xiu. But now, the terrifying strength displayed by Tan Xiu, as well as the white-clothed man, brought him a deep threat. However, what shocked him the most was that more than 20 of his subordinates, who were standing in the shadows, were killed just like that. He didn't even know who did it. Tan Xiu, an angry roar came out of Yao Xinhua's mouth. A smile outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. He cut off the rope on Tang Wei's body with a powerful qi and calmly walked to the front of Tang Tang and said with a light smile, "Are you afraid?" Tang Tang's eyes were very bright. She liked this big brother of hers very much and had heard a lot of things this big brother had done. Her quick-witted eyes blinked as she giggled and said, "I was afraid, big brother Tan Xiu. But now that you're here, I'm not afraid anymore." Tan Xiu smiled and untied the rope for her. He also untied the rope on Guan Yinyan's body and then said with a smile, "Did you hear what I just said? Some people think that the last eunuch on earth is very interesting, so I need to ask you to do something. After you go out, you must spread the news that young Master Yao Xinhua of the Yao family has become the last living eunuch in the world." As Tan Xiu's voice faded away, a hazy shadow flashed in the darkness. At this moment, Yao Xinhua suddenly clutched his crotch with fear and pain in his eyes as he screamed. "Big brother!" Yao Xintao's complexion greatly changed. But before he could finish shouting, his head was cut off. Fortunately, the haunted house was quite dark, and Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao were a bit far away from Tang Tang and Guan Yanyan. Otherwise, they would have been scared silly. Tang Wei got up from the chair and fiercely punched the 4 big men who seemed to have their bodies immobilized. Then, he ran to Tan Xiu's side and said, "Tan Xiu, kill this Yao Xinhua." "I'll kill him, but not now," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "Brother Tang Wei, take them home first. I'll go back to find you after I've dealt with the matters here." "I'll stay and help you," said Tang Wei quickly. "I don't need your help. I can easily deal with the matters here." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said. Tang Wei hesitated for a moment before he silently nodded and said, then we'll wait for you at Grandpa's place. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu walked to the chair where Yao Xinhua had just sat. He sat on it and kicked Yao Xinhua, who was curled up on the ground and howling in pain, to the side. Then, he smilingly said, how is it? Heaven is treating you well, isn't it? Your dream has come true and you've become the last living eunuch in this world. Don't you feel particularly honored? Fuck you, Tan Xiu. A suction force gushed out from Tan Xiu's hand and directly made Yao Xinhua kneel on the ground. He then grabbed his neck and coldly snorted, you can curse me if you want to die now. Call your elders if you don't want to die now and ask them to come and save you. Remember, the Amur tiger must come. Chapter 555. Humiliation was like a poisonous snake biting his heart, while fear was like a cold current that invaded his soul. Yao Xinhua once stood on the top of the tallest building in Las Vegas, holding a glass of red wine and overlooking the world. He thought that he was the leader of the new generation of talents and the most outstanding elite in the world. However, at this moment, feelings of humiliation and fear intertwined, making his heart turn to ash and full of despair. At this moment, he realized that he was just like a frog in a well, arrogant and conceited. In China alone, Tan Xiu of the Tang family was far from what he could deal with. Cough, cough, just kill me. Yao Xinhua's throat was clutched by Tan Xiu. His face flushed as he spat out a sentence with difficulty. Bam! The moment Tan Xiu released Yao Xinhua, he kicked his chest. Even though he used less than 10% of his strength, it still broke several of Yao Xinhua's ribs. With a bit of killing intent, Tan Xiu smiled and said, you want to die? Do you really think you can die? I'll tell you bluntly that I have countless ways to make you beg for death. Do you believe me? Humph. Yao Xinhua, who was lying on the ground, covered his chest with his hands. Even though he was in extreme pain, he still snorted coldly. A smile was outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. His figure flashed and appeared next to Yao Xinhua. His fingers hit more than a dozen acupoints on his body and then sat back on the chair. With your current physical condition, you should be able to persist for half an hour. After 25 minutes, I'll start treating you and guarantee that you'll be full of vigor. Then, I'll let you continue to feel this wonderful feeling. By the way, you should be able to believe what I said, right? After all, I have another identity, and that is, I'm called the young divine doctor by others. Yao Xinhua's hands were tightly clenched. Blue veins protruded on his forehead, and his eyes even began to turn bloodshot. A heart-wrenching pain seemed to come from the depths of his soul. He had received devilish training abroad, and the pain he had endured was not even a 10,000th of the pain he was feeling right now. This feeling, he felt like he was in the 18th layer of hell, suffering countless cruel tortures. He wanted to scream and roar, but he could only make low whimpers in his throat. He wanted to die immediately, but he couldn't do it at all, because he couldn't even muster the slightest bit of strength in that intense pain. He could neither live nor die. Yao Xinhua finally believed that people could have such feelings. Moreover, he believed Tan Xiu's words because Tan Xiu was indeed known as the young divine doctor. If he couldn't take it anymore and was on the verge of death, he might really be able to cure him and continue to endure this pain. He was defeated. He finally lowered his proud head in an attempt to beg for Tan Xiu's forgiveness and agree to Tan Xiu's request. However, he had no way to express himself. He could only struggle in endless pain and twitch in despair. Once the 25 minutes were up, Tan Xiu immediately lifted the torture on Yao Xinhua's body. Yao Xinhua was lying limp on the ground like a dead dog, gasping for breath. Tan Xiu clapped his hands and exclaimed, my guess is correct. Enduring for half an hour is not a problem. I'll start treating you now and let you continue to endure this pain after you're cured. I'll continue to feed you after you've endured it for 3 days and 3 nights. I believe the pain will be more than 10 times more painful at that time. After saying that, Tan Xiu pretended to treat him. While Yao Xinhua was in despair, he was finally able to speak. He roared with an extremely hoarse voice, I'll make a phone call. Spare me. I'll do as you say. He surrendered so quickly. Tan Xiu said with a strange expression. This is not the style of the young master of the Yao family. Style my ass. Yao Xinhua wailed inwardly. After struggling for a while, he crawled up with difficulty. He knelt on his knees and crawled half a meter toward Tan Xiu, pleading, I was wrong. I shouldn't have provoked the Tang family. I shouldn't have provoked you. I beg you to spare me, even if you have to kill me. Tan Xiu rolled his eyes and coldly snorted, You're really a cheap wretch. I gave you face, but you don't want it. You just want to cry and beg me to give you a chance. Alright, talking to an ant like you is already giving you face. Make a phone call. According to what I just said, it's best to let your Yao family's patriarch come. If he doesn't want to come, at least let that Amur tiger come. If you can't do it, Yao Xinhua's complexion changed. He took out his mobile with a panicked expression and dialed his grandfather, Yao Qingzuan's cell number with trembling fingers. What's up, Xinhua? After the call was connected, Yao Qingzuan's dignified voice came out of the phone. Save me, Grandpa, Yao Xinhua hurriedly called out with a hoarse voice. I can't bear it anymore. He's too ruthless, at the Yao family's ancestral residence. Yao Qingzuan was sitting in an armchair while answering the phone. Sitting opposite him was Amur Tiger, who was tasting the best tea he had served. Upon hearing Yao Xinhua's words, Yao Qingzuan's complexion greatly changed. He suddenly stood up and shouted in a deep voice, What happened? Who is he? It's Tan Xiu. He's Tan Xiu, shouted Yao Xinhua. I originally planned to humiliate Tang Wei of the Tang family. Who would have thought? Grandpa, please come and save me. Tan Xiu is too terrifying. He has already killed Xinlei and Xintao. I'm afraid I won't be able to live long if you don't send someone here. Yao Qingzuan's body trembled and disbelief burst out from his eyes. Although Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao were not his biological grandsons and were stubborn and mischievous in nature, they were, after all, members of the Yao family and had medium aptitude in the new generation. But now, they were actually killed. Or was it that damn Tan Xiu of the Tang family? Where is he? Asked Yao Qingzuan in a deep voice. I'll send someone there immediately. Grandpa, Tan Xiu specifically asked Amur Tiger to come here. I beg you. He said that if Amur Tiger doesn't come, I'll still be dead, cried Yao Xinhua. Quickly send him here. Many members of our Yao family have been killed. I'm at the Jiabao amusement park in the Quoto district, in the haunted house. Yao Qingzuan finally revealed a horrified expression. Many people have been killed. What does that mean? Apart from Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao, many others have been killed. Wait. Yao Qingzuan hung up and looked at Amur Tiger. At this moment, Amur Tiger had already heard the conversation between Yao Qingzuan and Yao Xinhua. Although the voice coming from the phone was very low, he could still hear it clearly. Looking at Yao Qingzuan's gaze, he directly asked, Is that Tan Xiu a member of the Tang family? Yao Qingzuan knew how powerful Amur Tiger was, so he nodded and said, That's right. He's the most outstanding descendant of the Tang family. He has destroyed a lot of our Yao family's affairs. He's just a brat. Amur Tiger shook his head and smilingly said, Since he specifically asked me to go there, then I'll go and clean him up. The Tang family is really stupid. If I didn't promise to give Tang Guisheng 7 days, I would have gone there to destroy the Tang family now. I believe the 7 days will be up soon, said Yao Qingzuan in a heavy tone. The Tang family has overestimated themselves, so let them continue to live in fear. With you here, the Tang family won't be able to stir up any waves. Dong Bei, who was very satisfied with Yao Qingzuan's words. He nodded and followed Yao Qingqing, who was called over by Yao Qingzuan, outside. Time fleeted by. Half an hour later, Yao Qingqing arrived at the Jabeol amusement park in the Quoto district with dozens of Yao family members and Amur Tiger. Standing in front of the entrance of the haunted house, Yao Qingqing respectfully said, "Master Hu, they are inside." "Sorry to trouble you." Amur Tiger smiled and shook his head. Just as he was about to step into the haunted house's entrance, he keenly caught a figure nearby. When he saw the figure, he instantly retracted his foot and instantly pounced toward the other party. In just half a second, he stood in front of the other party. "How come it's you?" Amur Tiger frowned and looked at the person in front of him. A forced smile appeared on Taoist Su Yang's face. After shaking his head, he raised the jar of wine he had prepared in advance and said, "We've known each other for a lifetime, yet we don't have any killing intent toward each other. Speaking of which, we can be considered as half-friends. You're about to leave today, and as your friend, I'm here to see you off. If there's an afterlife, I hope you'll mind your own business in the future." Amur Tiger's complexion changed and he coldly snorted, "What do you mean by that damned old Taoist?" "You don't need to ask me." Taoist Su Yang sighed. "You've already set foot here, so I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for you to leave today. This jar of wine is for you to see you off. Please." Amur Tiger's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't take the jar of wine. Instead, he stared at Taoist Su Yang. After a long time, he slowly asked, "Have you broken through?" "Yep." Taoist Su Yang nodded. "Even if you've broken through, you're still far from being on par with me." Amur Tiger sneered. "If you really want to support the Tang family, then don't blame me for disregarding our many years of friendship and killing you here today." Taoist Su Yang slightly furrowed his brows. He shook his head and said, "I think you misunderstood. Since you want to deal with the Tang family, there will naturally be people from the Tang family who will deal with you. I'm just here to see you off." Gazing deeply at Taoist Su Yang, Amur Tiger suddenly burst into laughter and said, "Your joke is really funny, Taoist Su Yang. I think this jar of wine shouldn't be a farewell wine for me, but a celebratory wine. I originally planned to give the Tang family some time, but now it seems that they have made their decision. I'll directly exterminate the Tang family after I deal with these guys here." Taoist Su Yang's expression moved and he asked, "You really don't want to drink it now?" "I'll drink it after I kill them." Amur Tiger sneered. "It seems that my painstaking efforts are in vain." Taoist Su Yang sighed. "You can't drink this wine after all. Go." Amur Tiger sneered, but he became cautious inwardly. His figure instantly disappeared and appeared in the haunted house a few seconds later. "What a strong smell of blood." Amur Tiger's brows furrowed after he set foot here, and the vigilance in his eyes turned more intense. Today's third update. Seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes for support. Chapter 556. Inside the dark haunted house, Tang Xiu had already maintained a cross-legged posture, and the cigarette between his fingers was also emitting green smoke. Dressed in white, the handsome light was fiddling with the crescent-shaped machete in his hand and didn't even glance at Dong Bei who just came in. In the darkest corner, dark seemed to have blended with the darkness and converged her aura. Even though Dong Bei who had a very high cultivation, he didn't notice the slightest abnormality. Of course, this was also because of the black cloth in front of her. "You're Tan Xiu." Dong Bei whose eyesight was amazing. He was secretly shocked when he saw more than 20 corpses inside, 2 of which were headless. His identity was extraordinary, but he didn't want to commit murder before. It had been more than a decade since he killed someone with his own hands. "Shoo!" Tan Xiu raised his right index finger and put it to his mouth. His eyes moved away from Dong Bei Hu to look at Yao Qingqing and the dozens of experts of the Yao family. Dong Bei Hu furrowed his brows. But his 200 years of lifespan had long given him great wisdom and patience. Therefore, he fell into silence and calmly stood there, wanting to see what kind of trick Tan Xiu would play. After Yao Qingqing entered the haunted house, he smelled a strong smell of blood. His complexion changed and he dashed to the front of Dong Bei Hu. His eyes swept over the corpses and finally landed on Yao Xinhua, who was lying limply on the ground like a pile of mud. "Son!" Yao Qingqing roared and dashed to Yao Xinhua's side. He squatted down and carefully propped him up, letting him sit on the ground and lean on his arms. Yao Xinhua's breathing was weak and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. His handsome face was now wet with sweat in addition to the coagulated blood scabs. His blurred vision clearly saw that it was his father who held him up. He squeezed out a smile and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry, Dad. I have one favor to ask of you, just one favor." Yao Qingqing's eyes overflowed with tears as he repeatedly nodded and said, "Tell me, son. Dad will promise you anything." Yao Xinhua's throat squirmed and he pleaded, "Please kill me, Dad. Dying in your hands is better than dying in his hands. I'm afraid I won't be able to die in peace." Yao Qingqing's heart trembled as a heart-wrenching and lung-splitting pain surged inside him like a tide. His hands grabbed Yao Xinhua even tighter as he repeatedly shook his head and said, "Son, you won't die. Don't worry. As long as I'm here, no one can kill you." Saying that, he was about to get up and walk towards Tan Xiu. However, Yao Xinhua burst out with all the strength he had gathered after resting for a while. He grabbed Yao Qingqing's foot and hurriedly shouted, "Dad, let's go. You're not his match." When Tan Xiu saw the scene before him, he clapped his hands and said with a smile, "What a touching scene." The deep love between father and son. However, since you're here today, don't be in a hurry to go back. Of course, you won't be able to go back anyway. It just so happens that I'm someone who likes to do good deeds, so I'll send you, father and son, to the Yellow Springs Road today, so we can take care of each other on the way, no? Yao Qingqing squatted down again and hugged Yao Xinhua. He glared at Tan Xiu and sternly shouted, "I've long heard that there's a great freak among those cowards of the Tang family. I didn't expect that you're more powerful than I imagined. But, even if you're powerful, what can you do? You can kill ordinary people like them, but can you challenge Lord Hu? Stupid boy, today is the day you die." Tan Xiu grinned. He flicked the ash on his cigarette and smilingly said, "Seeing you so full of confidence, I suddenly remembered a saying, extreme prosperity is bound to fall. The Yao family has been powerful for decades, and the children of this family have been infected with an arrogant and domineering aura. Their bones are incomparably arrogant. It's a pity that the vision of the top families in China is too narrow. Well, since you're also a respected figure in the Yao family, I'll use your blood to pay tribute to the deceased members of my Tang family today." Whoosh, the crescent-shaped machete in Light's hand instantly shot out and rapidly rotated toward Yao Qingqing. At this moment, Dong Bei Hu coldly snorted and flicked his fingers. A flame rose from his fingertips and hit the crescent-shaped machete. Bam! Light's body trembled and a dense killing intent appeared on his face. Dong Bei Hu's complexion greatly changed and he retreated half a step back, barely managing to stabilize his body with his toes. However, even so, his wrist still felt a little sore and numb, and there was also a faint pain. "Hold on." Tan Xiu raised his arm to stop Light from continuing to attack. He let out a faint smile as he glanced at Dong Bei Hu and smilingly said, "You must be the legendary Dong Bei Hu of the Northeast, right? You're already so old, yet you don't want to spend your remaining years in your hometown in the Northeast. Instead, you actually run out here and cause trouble. Even if you don't think about yourself, don't you think about your descendants?" Dong Bei Hu glanced at him with vigilance, but a storm was constantly churning inside his heart. During the exchange just now, he discovered a situation that made his heart go cold. The white-robed young man in front of him, who looked to be only 26 or 27 years old, had a very strong cultivation base. He even faintly felt that the young man was superior to him. However, such a powerful young man actually stood respectfully next to Tan Xiu, greatly raising his vigilance against Tan Xiu. He had a feeling that Tang Xiu exuded a very evil aura. This kind of aura was like a dormant python that could pounce and bite him at any time. He wanted to see through Tan Xiu's strength, but he found that looking at Tan Xiu in front of him was like looking at the flower in the mirror and the moon in the water, a blurry scene. You seem very confident, young man. Dong Bei, who, after all, had his own dignity. Looking at Tan Xiu, who looked down on him, he couldn't restrain the anger inside him. Don't be afraid. Tan Xiu smilingly said, I may hate my enemies and will do anything to get rid of them, but I won't easily touch your descendants. Of course, the premise is that they don't provoke me, else I don't mind uprooting them. Actually, I just want to figure out one thing. Dong Bei, who squinted his eyes and asked, what do you want to know? The reason why you came to the imperial capital to make things difficult for my Tang family is not just to repay the Yao family's life-saving grace, am I right? Tan Xiu smilingly said. Dong Bei, who stared blankly for a moment and then looked at Tan Xiu in surprise. As a matter of fact, his purpose in coming to the imperial capital was indeed as Tan Xiu said. It was not just to repay the debt of gratitude. He also wanted to help him get a lot of cultivation resources through the Yao family. As a cultivator, the higher his cultivation level was, the more cultivation resources he needed to consume. But he hadn't mentioned this purpose to the Yao family's patriarch for the time being. The idea only existed in his mind, and he couldn't figure out how Tan Xiu guessed it. You're right. I need something, and the Yao family should be able to help me. Tan Xiu nodded and said, it's really a good idea to kill two birds with one stone. But it's a pity that you've just shot yourself in the foot. Not only will you not get any benefits, but you'll also end up losing everything, suffering a double loss. Alright, I'll give you a chance to survive. Dong Bei, who couldn't help laughing. Although Tan Xiu and Light gave him some pressure, he didn't believe that these two brats would be his match in a desperate fight. Although he had been concealing his strength and rarely fought with others all these years, he was also an old man who had gone through a storm of blood, so he wasn't afraid of fighting. Interesting. Tell me, what kind of chance will you give me? I'll give you 24 hours to kill all the direct descendants of the Yao family, said Tan Xiu. I want to see no less than 100 corpses. The smile on Dong Bei, whose face gradually faded and was replaced by a sneer as he ridiculed, young man, do you really think you can kill me just because you have some ability? It seems you don't want the chance I'm giving you, no? Tan Xiu said. That's not necessary, sneered Dong Bei, who. The most pitiful thing is that you're a frog in a well, yet you're so arrogant and conceited. Tan Xiu shook his head and sighed. Well, you've been living in China for nearly 200 years, so it's time for you to experience your tribulation now. Light, I need the golden core inside his body to concoct a pill. Understood. Light respectfully replied. His figure instantly appeared in front of Dong Bei, who. As the crescent moon-shaped machete danced in the air, layers of overlapping blade images instantly shrouded Dong Bei, who. At the same time, flames appeared out of thin air and lightning bolts suddenly surged. In a very short time, an electric flame array was formed and suppressed Dong Bei, who. What? Dong Bei, who had never seen such a method. While he was horrified, he also realized that he might have encountered an unprecedented crisis today. When Tan Xiu said that he needed the golden core inside his body, he realized that Tan Xiu had seen through his cultivation. What shocked him the most was that Tan Xiu even threatened to use the golden core to concoct a pill. Break. Dong Bei, who brandished his steel fists, and a huge amount of true essence gushed out. Fist images appeared and fiercely bombarded the crescent moon-shaped machete. At the same time, a small peach-wood sword appeared in his hand out of thin air. A trace of blood was forced out from his finger and quickly fused into the small peachwood sword. The blazing sword light seemed to be able to tear the space barrier and stabbed the electric flame array. Tan Xiu furrowed his brows and indifferently said, "I don't want this haunted house to be destroyed." Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, a black cloth wrapped around the Manchurian tiger. A flying sword moved like a sentient fish and gracefully swept past Dong Beihu's neck. Despite Dong Beihu dodging extremely fast, a bloody wound was still left on the right side of his neck. How can there be someone else here? Dong Beihu was scared out of his wits. His earth-shattering strike couldn't even break the electric flame array. However, a flying sword that only existed in legends had almost decapitated him. Chapter 557. The inexplicable appearance of two young cultivators had already made Dong Beihu extremely surprised. The fact that the two young men who attacked him had such a powerful strength shocked him to the point that it was hard for him to recover. Escape? The thought formed in Dong Beihu's mind, but he forcibly suppressed it. He found that although the two young men were not worse than him, they weren't much stronger than him. Even if it was difficult for him to win against the two of them, it would be as difficult as ascending to the blue sky for them to kill him. Tan Xiu quietly sat on the chair. The moment he saw the three people attack, a piece of jade appeared in his hand out of nowhere and was accurately placed under the chair. The array that he had set up in advance was activated by Tan Xiu after the jade was placed. As a layer of light curtain moved on the wall, the aftermath caused by the three people's fight was blocked by the array's light curtain. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. Dong Beihu, even if you can linger at death's door and barely hold on for some time, you can't protect them. Two silver needles appeared between Tan Xiu's fingers. With a flick of his fingers, the two silver needles pierced into the glabella of Yao Qingqing and Yao Xinhua at lightning speed. However, Tan Xiu's control of the silver needles was extremely exquisite. After the silver needles pierced into the glabella of the two people, they didn't immediately die. Instead, they felt dizzy and temporarily passed out. "Kill him!" shouted a martial arts grandmaster of the Yao clan. Although he was shocked to see Dong Beihu and the other two people fighting, he also seemed to see the hope of killing Tan Xiu. As he pulled out a tang knife, he aggressively pounced toward Tan Xiu. Tens of experts of the Yao family finally sobered up from the shock. They followed the martial arts grandmaster and stormed toward Tan Xiu. They had never seen Tan Xiu's strength and felt that although Tan Xiu had two powerful subordinates, he didn't have much ability himself. As long as they killed him, it would affect his two subordinates. A slight mistake in a fight between experts could end up with their heads separated from their bodies. Die! The expert from the Yao family, who was the first to reach Tan Xiu, raised his tang saber and slashed down at Tan Xiu, as if he wanted to split Tan Xiu in half. Courting death. Tan Xiu's face turned cold, and an illusory sword shadow flashed in his hand. After piercing through the right side of the opponent's chest, it swam back and forth like a fish. Dozens of Yao family experts rushed at Tan Xiu, but before they could get close to him, their hearts were pierced, and they fell to the ground in pain, twitching as they died. Another flying sword. Manchurian Tiger was also paying attention to Tan Xiu's situation while resisting the attacks from the light and dark duo. What shocked him was that Tan Xiu was still using a flying sword. He found it hard to believe that such a divine weapon like the flying sword actually existed in this world. What was even harder for him to accept was that he had already seen two flying swords today. Who were they? If the Tang family really had such a powerful force, wouldn't the Yao family have been eliminated a long time ago? Why was the Tang family always suppressed by the Yao family for so many years? He was stunned for a moment. The sword light in Light's hand suddenly pierced through his arm, and just as his complexion greatly changed, another sword light swept toward him. At the same time, several lightning bolts as thick as silver needles appeared in front of Manchurian Tiger despite being blocked by the sword light. Puff! 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 After Manchurian Tiger dodged the sword light, 4 lightning bolts silently penetrated his body. These 4 lightning bolts didn't directly penetrate his body, but in the blink of an eye, they had already stirred up his internal organs. Puff! Manchurian Tiger crazily spurted out a mouthful of blood, and a strong fear rose in his heart. The 2 flying swords suddenly exploded above his head, and layers of sword shadows spiraled toward his head. Get lost! With despair in his heart, Manchurian Tiger fiercely punched the sword shadows. However, the spiraling sword shadows were like a meat grinder, crushing his fist. Amidst the spray of blood, Dark's figure had already approached Manchurian Tiger's back. A sharp dagger pierced Manchurian Tiger's waist, and a hooked whip formed by quintessential essence instantly pulled out the golden core from Manchurian Tiger's dantian and threw it at Tan Xiu, who was sitting on the chair. Shake, seal. Tan Xiu's eyes lit up. He kept clapping his hands and instantly set up an isolation array. At the same time, he waved his sword to cut off the connection between the golden core and Manchurian Tiger. Arg! Manchurian Tiger was completely in despair. He never dreamed that the 2 youngsters in front of him would have so many fighting methods. He didn't expect that their combined strength would far surpass his. The fighting time from the beginning to the end didn't even exceed a minute, and the golden core in his body was forcibly taken away. With the golden core, his broken internal organs might be able to recover. But losing the golden core meant that he had lost his most important trump card. There's nothing I can do to reverse the situation. Just as this thought emerged in Manchurian Tiger's mind, a deep sense of regret welled up inside him. He found that he had indeed been sitting in a hole and looking at the sky. He thought that his strength was one of the best in the entire country. He did not expect that just 2 young men would be able to take his life. Just now. Tan Xiu gave him a chance, but he missed it because of his arrogance. Just now. Taoist Su Yang reminded him, but he ignored it because of his arrogance. At this moment, Manchurian Tiger was in despair. The regret almost made him die. He couldn't help but regret that he didn't drink the wine that Taoist Su Yang gave him when he was outside. I can't accept this. With a roar, Manchurian Tiger's body was split into 2 halves. With a satisfied smile, Tan Xiu took back the silver needles on Yao Qingqing and Yao Xinhua's glabella. As the 2 of them slowly woke up, Tan Xiu lit a cigarette again. He looked at the father and son duo and smilingly said, I can give you another chance. Let your Yao family's patriarch come in person. If he comes, you and your father can live. But if he doesn't come, you'll have to suffer inhuman pain. Yao Qingqing's heart fell into an ice cave as he clearly saw the scene in front of him. The dozens of Yao family experts he brought with him have already been completely wiped out. What scared him the most is that the famous Manchurian Tiger has actually been killed. His body was split into 2 halves, looking very miserable. Isn't Manchurian Tiger one of the best powerhouses in China? How could he be killed? Did that damn Tan Xiu use some despicable and shameless means? Yao Qingqing thought in despair. What he didn't know was that his son, Yao Xinhua, who was next to him, was even more desperate after hearing Tan Xiu's words. Suddenly, Yao Xinhua turned his hand and grabbed a sharp dagger from his trousers. It was as if his deepest potential burst out at this moment. The blade flashed and pierced Yao Qingqing's heart. What? Yao Qingqing's pupils shrunk, but his eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. He lowered his head with difficulty and looked at the dagger stuck in his chest, as well as the hand of his son, Yao Xinhua, on the hilt of the dagger. Why? Yao Qingqing's voice was trembling. Yao Xinhua let out a bitter smile. With the pain and 2 lines of tears on his face, he said in a hoarse voice, Dad, you should have killed me just now. I wouldn't have to see such a scene again, and I wouldn't have to continue suffering. Tan Xiu's means are too ruthless, and the pain is unimaginable to ordinary people. I can't bear it, but I can't stop it. I can't die even if I want to. I've experienced it before, so I can't let you experience the feeling of being unable to live or die again. After that, he knelt in front of Yao Qingqing, but suddenly turned his head to look at Tan Xiu. He put the dagger on his neck and shouted, "Surnamed Tang, we lost. We lost completely and utterly, and I'm convinced of our defeat. We can die, but you want my grandpa to die? You're just talking in your sleep." Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and said, "Yao Xinhua, I think it's quite interesting for you to kill your father with your own hands, so I didn't stop you. But do you think you can commit suicide if I don't let you die?" Yao Xinhua's body trembled and he suddenly exerted force on his wrist. The moment the dagger and sword pierced his neck, a black shadow flashed and directly cut off his wrist, cutting off his entire hand. "Aya!" Yao Xinhua screamed and screamed in pain with bloodshot eyes. Tan Xiu got up from the chair and came to Yao Xinhua's side step by step. He didn't look at Yao Xinhua, but his eyes fell on Yao Qingqing, who was still alive. He lightly smiled and said, "If you don't want your son to be tortured to the point of being unable to live or die, then call your Yao family's head. You only have half a minute." Yao Qingqing looked at his son in despair. At this time, he finally understood why his son did this. Since he was going to die today, his son just wanted him to die a quick death and not be tortured to death. How ruthless! Yao Qingqing closed his eyes in pain and his teeth instantly bit his tongue. Alas, Tan Xiu shook his head and turned to look at Yao Xinhua, only to find that he also bit his tongue. He immediately furrowed his brows and shook his head with a sigh, "Why bother? The Yao family will be exterminated sooner or later. I originally wanted the Yao family to exist for a few more years, but I didn't expect that you would court your own doom. Well, since you want to die, then I'll be kind and let you suffer less." The blade rose and fell. Yao Qingqing and Yao Xinhua, father and son, were instantly killed by Tan Xiu. Standing in the hall, Tan Xiu looked at the corpses all over the floor and the bloody scene. Then, he calmly said, "Burn this haunted house and burn all the corpses inside to ashes." Suddenly, a hazy figure appeared out of thin air. With a bit of grief, Taoist Su Yang looked at the Amur tiger that was split into two halves. As the wine from the wine jar in his hand was sprinkled next to the Amur tiger's corpse, he murmured, "How can others kill you if you don't provoke them? The sins of the heavens can be forgiven, but the sins brought upon oneself can't be avoided. Old friend, have a safe journey." Tan Xiu lightly glanced at Taoist Su Yang before he turned and walked outside. Chapter 558. Tang Family Ancestral Residence. Tang Guosheng stood in the courtyard with a gloomy expression. At this time, apart from him, almost all the core members of the Tang family had arrived. There were also hundreds of experts that the Tang family had nurtured. They had sealed off the entire Tang family's ancestral home and the area within a radius of several hundred meters. Still no news. Tang Guosheng could not help but ask. Tang Min stood to the side and shook her head with an ugly expression. Suddenly, several figures rushed in from outside the courtyard. Tang Wei and Tang Tang rushed into the courtyard and shouted, "We're back, Grandpa." Tang Guosheng's expression changed and a pleasantly surprised look appeared in his eyes. He walked a few steps toward the duo and loudly said, "Good, good, good. It's good that you came back safe and sound. Where was Xiu? Didn't he go to save you? Why didn't he come back with you?" "Grandpa, Tan Xiu asked us to come back earlier. He said that he'll stay to deal with the Yao family. Before we came back, he led his men to kill many Yao family clansmen. By the way, Yao Xinlei and Yao Xintao of the Yao family were killed by Tan Xiu's men. That Yao Xinhua was also castrated and turned into a living eunuch." Tang Guosheng's complexion changed. He didn't feel happy because the three juniors of the Yao family were killed and injured. Instead, he was horrified and asked in a deep voice, "Little Wei, are you sure that Xiu wants to stay and fight against the Yao family? That Manchurian tiger. Unexpectedly, Tang Wei interrupted Tang Guisheng's words and said, "Grandpa, Tan Xiu is someone who knows his limits. He wouldn't have stayed there to wait for death if he didn't have full confidence. Don't worry. Maybe he'll be back soon." Tang Guisheng angrily shouted, "Nonsense." Although he knew some martial arts, what kind of person was the Manchurian tiger? He was a cultivator who had lived for 100 or 200 years, a monster that even the leaders of the country feared. "Yunpeng, you stay here and organize our Tang family members to withdraw from the capital immediately. I will personally lead some people to find Xiu. Even if I die, I will not let him suffer any harm." Tang Yinda paced 2 steps forward and said in a deep voice, "Dad, you stay. Tan Xiu is my son. As his father, I have to go personally. So, I'll bring some people over." Tang Guisheng angrily shouted, "You're his father, but I'm his grandfather. Do as I say, and hurry over at once. Yun Qing, return to the 27th Army immediately and wait for my orders. Once the Yao clan wants to exterminate our Tang clan, then we'll fight it out with them. At worst, we'll have a life and death struggle." "All right." Tang Yunqing agreed. He called his son, Tang Ning, and quickly ran outside. Tang Guisheng looked at Tang Min and said in a deep voice, "Go back immediately and wait for my order at the Armed Forces Department." "Yes." Tang Min agreed and quickly left as well. Just as Tang Yunqing, his son, and Tang Min were about to walk out of the courtyard gate, 2 figures blocked their path. "What are you doing?" Tang Yunqing recognized the identity of the 2 men in front of him. They came from Jingmen Island and were Tan Xiu's subordinates. An expert of the Everlasting Feast Hall respectfully said, "Mr. Tang, you know very little about our boss, so you don't believe in his ability. Similarly, you also don't know about our Everlasting Feast Hall's heritage. Please don't be anxious and wait for a while. Or you can directly call boss and ask about the situation over there." Tang Yunqing turned his head and looked at Tang Guisheng. Tang Guisheng was silent for a moment before he directly grabbed his mobile and dialed Tan Xiu's number. After a short while, the call was connected. "Where are you now, Xiu? How's the situation over there?" asked Tang Guisheng hurriedly. "I was just about to call you, Grandpa," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "I didn't expect you to call me ahead of me. The matter here has been solved, so I'll go back now." Tang Guisheng quickly asked, "It's settled?" "How?" asked Tang Guisheng quickly. "How else can it be solved?" "I killed them all," said Tan Xiu with a smile. Tang Guisheng asked in surprise, "What about the Manchurian tiger? Didn't he go?" "He came and was killed by my men," said Tan Xiu. "Also, I killed Yao Qingqing of the Yao family. He's the son of the Yao family's patriarch, so it can be said that he has temporarily vented our Tang family's anger." Tang Guisheng was horrified. "What did you say? Yao Qingqing is dead? And, you said your men killed the Amur tiger? How is that possible? Is it very difficult to kill the Amur tiger, Grandpa?" Tan Xiu said with a faint smile. "I told you that my ability is much stronger than you can imagine. Let alone one, even if there are 10 Amur tigers, they won't be able to live long if I really intend to get rid of them." Tang Guisheng was still somewhat unable to accept the fact that the Amur tiger was killed. After a moment of silence, he immediately said, "Xiu, since the matter over there has been solved, come back immediately. I'll be waiting for you at home." "All right." Tan Xiu replied and hung up the phone. Outside the haunted house. A cold glint flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he looked at the burning haunted house. Light quietly stood behind him, while dark was nowhere to be seen. "Daoist Su Yang, it's not convenient for you to continue following me since the Amur tiger is dead. So, go back to where you came from. I hope you can keep the matter about the Everlasting Feast Hall a secret." Daoist Su Yang was silent for a moment before he slowly nodded and said, "Daoist Tang, I know what I'm doing and I won't speak carelessly. However, there's something I want to tell you." Speak. Tan Xiu nodded. Can I go to the everlasting feast hall to ask you for advice when I have free time in the future? Taoist Su Yang pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, I used to be a frog in the well, mistaking that your strength is inferior to mine. But now I realize that you can easily kill me if we really fight. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, all right. After all, you helped me with something in Resting Cemetery Island, so I'll agree to your request. However, it's best for you to contact me before you go to the Everlasting Feast Hall since I rarely stay there. I already have your contact number, so I'll contact you in advance before I go, said Taoist Su Yang quickly. Alright, then you go first. Tan Xiu said. Along with Taoist Su Yang's departure, Tan Xiu and the Light and Dark trio quickly left and arrived at the Tang family's ancestral residence. At this moment, everyone in the Tang family's ancestral residence was quietly waiting. The atmosphere in the entire courtyard was particularly solemn. With the arrival of Tan Xiu, all the core members of the Tang family had their eyes on Tan Xiu. Su Lingyun, who had rushed over, ran to Tan Xiu with a nervous expression and hurriedly asked, Are you all right, Xiu? Tan Xiu smiled and shook his head. He gently hugged Su Lingyun's shoulder and smilingly said, Mom, do I look like someone who has something to do with me? Don't worry. I've solved everything that needs to be solved. It's just a small problem. How is it a small problem? Su Lingyun said. This, Tan Xiu interrupted Su Lingyun and smilingly said, I'm not a child anymore, Mom. I know what I'm doing. You don't want to see our Tang family being forced by the Yao family to leave the imperial capital and China, do you? No, I don't. Su Lingyun shook her head. That's why I'll do whatever I can. Tan Xiu smilingly said. Don't worry. I'll definitely pay attention to my own safety. Su Lingyun nodded. Tan Xiu loosened Su Lingyun's shoulder and came to Tang Guoxing's front. Then, he smilingly said, Grandpa, Dong Bei Hu is really dead. His corpse was also burned. Additionally, Yao Qingqing, Yao Xinhua, Yao Xinlei, and Yao Xintao, 4 members of the Yao family, were also killed by my men. At the same time, dozens of experts of the Yao family were also killed. One of them was a martial arts grandmaster, but he also died. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, Tang Guoxing's heart couldn't help but tremble. At present, the biggest enemies of the Tang family were the Yao family and Dong Bei Hu. Dong Bei Hu was dead and the Yao family suffered heavy losses, which was definitely a great thing for the Tang family. However, he was still puzzled and couldn't figure out how Tan Xiu killed Dong Bei Hu. Tan Xiu smilingly pointed to Light, who came in with him, and lightly said, Grandpa, he's Light, my grand disciple. There's also Dark, and it's inconvenient for her to appear. Their strength is not worse than Dong Bei Hu. Tang Guoxing's body shook. He carefully observed Light a few times and then nodded with satisfaction. Good boy. I really didn't expect you to be more powerful than that Dong Bei Hu has lived for more than 200 years at such a young age. You're overpraising us. Light faintly smiled and modestly replied. Tang Guoxing looked at Tan Xiu again and said, Xiu, since Dong Bei Hu is dead, then we. With a cold expression, Tan Xiu said in a deep voice, since the Yao family really wants to shed all pretense of cordiality with us, then I won't endure it any longer. The earlier we get rid of this hidden danger, the smoother the development of our Tang family will be. Grandpa, can you temporarily hand over the power of the Tang family to me? I guarantee that the Yao family will be removed from the imperial capital within 3 days. Can we discuss this matter again, Xiu? Tang Guoxing quickly said. The Yao family has a deep foundation. Even if our Tang family can remove them, I'm afraid we'll suffer a great loss. There will be 60 experts rushing to the imperial capital by tonight at the latest, said Tan Xiu. All of them are cultivators, and the weakest among them is stronger than a martial arts grandmaster. With their cooperation, I don't think the Yao family will be able to resist such a terrifying force even if they have a deep foundation, right? Tang Guosheng was stunned. He simply couldn't believe his ears. 60. Cultivators who are more powerful than martial arts grandmasters. At the side. All the members of the Tang family looked at Tan Xiu in shock. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that Tan Xiu would have such a terrifying armed force. Tang Yunda strode toward Tan Xiu and seriously asked, "Son, you're not lying, right? Are there really so many experts coming?" "Yes." Tan Xiu nodded heavily. Tang Yunda turned to look at Tang Guosheng and said in a deep voice, "Dad, I believe in Xiu. I believe you've seen what he has done in the past. Just agree to it. Our Tang family can't endure it anymore." Tang Guosheng seemed to have made up his mind and said in a deep voice, "If that's the case, then let's do it. I'm going to make some calls." The third update is over. Asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.